Rendell Eric is in the exact same boat. That guy will sit here and tell you, like, a year ago even, he'd be like, I'm a public land purist. That's the only way I do it, And I'm like, dude, we're friends. Like, just be real with me. And then he's like, yeah, piece of private sounds pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's not like you lose. HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, we've been using Deer Grow products for a long time. The Plot Start and Plot Boost, more recently Plot Till. Now we've got 3 new liquid fertilizers that have been put in the mix that will cover everything we could want for a food plot program.
It's huge, man. The more food plotting we do, it's like, man, the liquids just make sense. Like whether it's herbicides or the Plot Start and Plot Boost, and now the fertilizers getting mixed in. It's like, man, I can combine all of those in certain cases and do less passes for more results.
I mean, it's all about efficiency. I mean, like you said, less passes. If you're out there treating your beans with glyphosate in the summertime, you can mix in this fertilizer, do that all at once. You have the boost in there to help some metabolism. It's all about efficiency when we're talking about food plots. And really the big difference on these liquid fertilizers is you're bypassing some of these soil limitations, pH limitations, the soil type. In a lot of cases, we talk about dry fertilizers only being available for 17% of what you put down in the first year. These liquid fertilizers straight into the plant are 90% available in the first year. Huge difference in what you're going to see in growth.
It's huge. And so right now you can use code HUNTR15 for 15% off any of the Deer Grow products on their website. And as always,
better food plots, bigger deer. And we're back.
Hey, yo.
HUNTR Podcast.
Forgot to take my deep breath before it.
Episode 239. As Nick is now settled in Charleston, South Carolina. It's the migration of the Hunter clan.
This would be a dentist's favorite series of podcasts. 230.
230.
Sorry. I gotta get those out of the way.
Yeah, dad jokes. So yes, 239. It is February 20th today.
Yeah, very very wintry. Still feeling. Yesterday, I think, was the first day where I was really like.
You're struggling yesterday a little bit.
No, I'm tired of winter.
Well, yeah,
it's just cold. Like when you open, when I open the door to let the dogs out, and like when I go outside, I'm tired of just being cold and snowy.
Well, there is some end in sight coming. I saw like some like high 40s.
Yeah,
coming up.
Yeah,
sometime
you'll have those. Hopefully that's
probably not though. Like
pseudo.
Unfortunately, March usually still feels like we should be there, but we're not, and it just stays. Yeah. Wintry, esque. Right. But it is what it is. I think the sucky part now is like it's like, okay, I want to go out and shed hunt or do something. And then we get snow, and I'm like,
We're busy right now too. Just got a lot of work stacking up.
Now's the time.
Feels like maybe it's just me, but it feels like everything's compounding towards like weather breaking, and then it's like it's all hands on deck.
Oh, so it's gonna let loose.
Yeah, there's just a lot of preparation, anticipation, and.
Yeah, well, and
raringness to go.
These are the things that, like, when we talk about projects that we've got in mind on farms or whatever, it's like the days just keep slipping because of what we just talked about. You open the door and it's 5 degrees out and snowy, and you're like, well, not gonna do anything this weekend.
Yeah. Well, yes. I don't know. I'm hitting a little bit of roadblocks. I told you with my dad's. He's become anti-burning in the past, So.
Anti-fire.
He's just
is he Smokey Bear?
He's just always paranoid. And I'm like, I get it. He's like sending me links to like, how to file a lawsuit if you burn your neighbor's house down. And I'm like, dude, this is like, we're miles away from like the nearest house. I'm like, it's like you just got to do it right. You got to do smart.
You're right.
I'm not saying that there's not opportunity. That there's not. Great care needs to be taken in setting up for those projects. But I'm like, we can do it. We've burnt, dozens of acres in the past. I was like, this is no different. Well, the difference is this would be our first like timber burn.
Which we talked is typically a more mild burn than when you light a field of warm season grasses or dead grasses.
Much more so, yeah. But he doesn't know that. He doesn't. He just looks at the woods and sees fuel.
Yeah.
Fuel and liability.
Yeah, and like we talked, like the few that I've done, I probably failed 4 out of 5 times getting the damn thing even started.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't go.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. Those leaves don't want
to go. The conditions just have to be right. And, when we've had a pretty, high precipitation winter right now. yeah, I mean, there's a ton of moisture in the ground that just is not going to want to go.
Well, what I can't piece together in my mind is like there's a burn ban in Ohio, like statewide every year. And that I can't remember in years past, but this year I'm looking and it starts March 1st.
Mm-hmm.
It's March, April, May, I think June. And then you can start burning again in July through whatever, August or September. And I'm like looking back at our dates that we burned last year and it was like March 26th. And I'm like, how, you know what I mean? I don't think that they changed the dates, but I also recall being within, you know, because we called and checked with the local fire department last year. We're like, hey, we're going to burn tomorrow. Are we good? And they're like, yeah, just as long as you're ahead of, you know, this burn ban starts in the next couple of days. So I'm like, did it not start until April 1st?
Yeah, maybe.
So I don't.
And now it's March 1st?
That's what it's saying.
Does it say what the purpose of that is?
Just general, you know, wildfire prevention.
Seems weird.
And I think, I could be wrong about this, but I think it's like all burning. Like,
yeah,
burning trash outside.
Yeah, and like burn barrels and
like
stuff.
They say you can't do, and I'm like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm always good for a good burn barrel fire.
Yeah, yeah, I love burn barrel fire. Dude, one time at my old apartment, I think I threw away like some bullets or something, bullets, not shotgun shells, like 223, like 5.56 types. I don't know why I was throwing them away, but my landlord at the time was like, he just took all of our trash and like decided to burn it. And he's like a couple hours into this fire, he's like, freaking bullet, like gunshots started going off, you know, and he's like, he'll hear him like whizzing past his head.
Josh Bomar move.
Yeah. Did that happen on the truck?
His truck.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, dude, you can't burn that. You're supposed to be burning that.
Don't burn those bullets. Yeah, no, it is kind of a weird time frame on that side. And I mean, it's just overall, I mean, fire has become such a bad thing in society's eyes that there's probably like an unreal amount of regulations. Like I told you in Kentucky, you know, I can't even burn in Kentucky. I have to have like a master burn license person there, certified burn license.
Dude,
there.
It's such an effective tool. Like it's honestly like the answer. When you're looking at like your timber acreage where like a vast majority of it is just like leaf litter and maybe you have like some multiflora or small stuff coming in where there is sunlight. I mean, I personally think the best thing that you can do is start to clear the slate with a fire and then bring trees down and then, you know, treat your invasives in the midst of that.
Agree.
You know, hack and squirt some of your smaller stuff. If you're going to seed anything into it, do that before you bring trees down. But like there's a step-by-step procedure that you can really convert, you know, wooded acreage into premium quality habitat.
And I understand the restrictions.
Starts with fire.
Yeah, I understand the restrictions around it, but the more restrictions in place, the less people are going to do it. You know, and that's, yeah, I mean, when you've got, like I've got places in Kentucky that, I mean, it's probably 18 plus inches of leaf litter from years and years and years and years, and it just doesn't decompose at a fast rate.
That's a lot of leaf litter. 18 inches?
Oh, dude, it's crazy.
Wow.
Like it just stacks up, and you know it doesn't decompose, and it's on sandstone cliffs and stuff like that. Like the only way that you're gonna get any sunlight to that ground is to burn it off.
Yeah, that's right. I don't think I have that much, but it's just, if you go out and walk right now, you'll see it, you know, like unlike any other time of the year, it's just like caked leaf litter, and it's like nothing's going to come through that. You know what I mean? There is no, you know, don't fool yourself into thinking woods is habitat necessarily. You know, it's like you need understory.
Yeah. The other interesting thing I watched when we were talking about burning, I kind of got on a hook. So I was watching a Craig Harper video the other day on burning, and I thought he made some really good points in that, because people are like, most of the time when people get aggressive on their fire, it's from, you know, lighting that head fire that essentially is with the wind and it just takes off. The problem with that is because it moves so fast, if you have thick thatch or leaves or whatever, it doesn't consume all of the fuel.
Yeah, just
and
glazes
so
over it.
his model with some strategic head fires is like he would rather let a slow, you know, back burn basically happen so that it consumes most of that fuel, and then, you know, maybe it takes 4 or 5 times as long, but what's left is nothing, like ash that will disintegrate.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, because a lot of people, and I've started watching, like more and more people I'm seeing are doing head fires, and then they go back and like there's just still a mat of thatch underneath it.
Yeah. I mean, those head flames, they're hotter. So I guess if you're having trouble like getting a flame, like but I wouldn't do the whole thing as a head flame. Like you can go out ahead of it a few yards and then kind of you have to work it sometimes. But
so anyways, fire good.
Yeah, I'd still like to do some of that. I mean, if we can go into March, like if I can, whatever local fire department says we're good, then I'd love to shoot for March sometime. But I think I've got some convincing to do. And
well, and I mean, I get it. Like,
yeah,
we try to feel like we're planning in advance on all of these things, but ultimately it seems like it always just like sneaks up, and it's like, oh, we should have been doing it already
for projects.
Yeah.
So. Well, they're ending and they're year to year. They're hard to stay on top of.
Yeah. So, anyways, we got a guest today. We got Josh Teulker on from Before the Echo.
Yep.
And so you've been talking with Josh here for a little bit, and we've watched a bunch of his content. And so it was like, okay, I think we share a lot of the same thoughts and feelings on things that are out there. And so,
well, maybe. I mean, yes and no.
Yeah.
I appreciate his like what he's doing just because it's real. He's Before the Echo is a podcast. I'll let him explain maybe the background. There was some affiliation, I think, we've seen some stuff with Infault that he's done in the past, some collab stuff, and I think he's doing it on his own now. So we can talk about that. But I mean, it's just real. It's just real conversation. I mean, I appreciate any time somebody can honestly and objectively like observe, what we're seeing in the industry and different conversations that are being had. And so I just felt like per that, I was like, man, it's just be a fun guy to talk to. So
yeah, I think his style seems a lot of like sitting down vlog type, like, hey, here's something I've been thinking about and
exactly
lay it out there. So, which is cool. Cause I think that, like a lot of our stuff, I bet he sees a ton of differences in the comments that then approach, those types of pieces of content.
Well, I think it's, and not to leave him off here too long, I want to let him get in on this conversation, but I just like, I see comments on, especially on our stuff, but on everybody's stuff that's just like, what's the word? Like uninformed, ignorant. I'm like
a bit ignorant.
I'm just like, what is this person talking about? And I just can't help but have the feeling that like, man, if we were in a room together, like I think you would understand, and if not, I want to know why, you know what I mean? So I'm most intrigued by people that like adamantly disagree or dislike us. Cause I'm curious as to why, cause I feel like our intentions are good. And so I'm like, I want to know. And if we're misguided, I want to improve. I want to change my mind.
I mean, I get some of the points of view, like, especially if like you're a pure public land hunter and, you hear us having conversations about manipulating the farm and adding food plots or stuff. I get it. Like that's really hard for you to relate to because you've never done it before. So there's no experience. There's no attachment to that. And frankly, you have to have a completely different style of scouting and hunting than we do because of the situation that you're in.
Yeah, well, and none of it from our perspective is meant to be offensive. It's just like very matter of fact. It's like, we understand everybody has different opportunity and, access and, or has achieved, different levels of whatever. It's not meant to be like, oh, well, you wouldn't get it. You wouldn't understand this or vice versa.
Yeah.
It's just, it is what it is. Everybody kind of, plays with the card that they're dealt and you can try to change your hand too. So,
well, there's just a lot of people that get set in the position of like, we are one way. And so there's been a lot of call outs of like, well, like these guys are just, trying to make it a rich man's sport. And it's like, I'm pretty sure like 90% of our podcasts bitch about it becoming a rich man's sport and like why it's going that direction and what we feel needs to be done to make it not go that direction.
Agreed. Well, that's the part that it's like, I feel bad for, I think the comments are in sometimes, misguided in that sense. I'm like, you guys don't get it. Like, but, most of it is they're not listening either. It's just,
sure.
You see a TikTok clip and you're like,
yeah,
this dude's got a, stupid mustache.
Yeah. I did see a man bun comment on yours the other day. I was like, I forgot he had a man bun.
Yeah. I think it was the guy's first time tuning in. I was like, I cut that off 1.5 years ago.
Cut it off. So anyways,
let Josh chime in here.
Yeah, he's ready.
All right.
He's hitting the hot button.
How's it going, guys?
Good, man. We appreciate you coming on this morning, and we're fighting some technical difficulties there, but I think we're We're straight now.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect now.
You think we'd only have done 238 of these beforehand?
Yeah.
So
I'm in the same boat.
always
So,
something, man. Well, dude, we appreciate it, and yeah, it's good to have you on. I think we were kind of talking earlier. Jared was saying like maybe if you want just to give the listeners kind of a brief intro there, just to keep us in line in that opener.
Yeah, no, you did a pretty good job. My name is Josh Teulker. I run a YouTube channel and podcast called Before the Echo, and you probably see me on the Hunting Beast a handful of times too. I used to help Dan a lot with the Hunting Beast, and now we do it's called the Beast Report over on his channel a couple times a month too. So yeah, I do a lot of just because I don't have as much time as I used to, but on my channel I do a lot of, like you said, I think they call them like grandpa vlogs or something, where you just sit down in front of a camera and just say what's on your mind. And I used to do a lot more, more edited videos or just going out, whatever kind of videos, hunting videos. But with work and 2 kids now, those are easier, and it seems like people like them just as well.
Yeah. No, I think it's cool, man. I mean, we were kind of talking about it there, like in the pre-podcast side of things. It's interesting because I think that, we at least look at it from a content side of evolution. Like obviously still watching hunting videos and things like that on YouTube is cool, but more and more it seems like these are becoming the places that if there is any discussion amongst the community, it strangely enough is happening in like the comment section.
Yeah. Which isn't always the best place to have a conversation, but it is happening. So
yeah.
I mean, what do you think, Josh? Why? I mean, I don't know how to ask this without just like straight up. It's like, and we can reduce this back however you want, but it's just kind of like, why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? You know what I mean? Like, what do you feel some sort of like conviction to like do your videos? Like, where do you feel like a lot of like the place that you're coming to, your platform? Where's that coming from?
Yeah, I don't like originally, man, I started my YouTube channel like a long time ago, whatever, 8 or 10 years ago. And it was just more of I grew up watching the Outdoor Channel, wanted to do that, and when YouTube came along, you could do that. Whether you're successful at it or not is a different story, So that's where that kind of started, just me wanting to maybe make a little money doing what I love to do, and then as I got older and I guess matured, the strong desire to like be somebody or, for lack of a better term, just be somebody in the outdoor industry or make money. It's kind of faded away a little bit. And it's more of just a desire to maybe in our country and outside of hunting, even there's so much noise and information that gets passed around, and we all kind of fall into these almost like cult-like followings of certain thinkings or certain groups of people, whether like you're a saddle hunter or a tree stand hunter or a private land hunter or a public land hunter. And oftentimes we just blindlessly follow those thinkings, and we don't actually like ponder why we think the way we think. And that's kind of where my little grandpa vlog started from, is like me just thinking out loud, like, man, why do I feel the way I do about people using crossbows? Is it actually a problem? Is it in my head just some kind of a weird tick I have? That's kind of where it started from. And then, it's real interesting. Like you said, the comment section, what you can get a lot of opinions from different people from that. So that's kind of, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's kind of, I guess
it's a good place as any to start, man. I mean, I think like this industry seemingly like more than any other, just because it's so, like it's not like a clear path to like, if you want to call it success, whether you deem that, actually in the field, like being successful at killing deer, or in like procuring an audience, like building a channel type of a thing. Like there is no, it's such a, more on the former than the latter. Like, the hunting, it's like for such a long time, it was like, we looked to these guys that were killing these big deer.
Yep.
As like, what are they doing? How are they doing this? And also we looked at, the deer or whatever species, I mean, they're killing like, a full, whatever, a slam of turkeys every year type of a thing. And it was such a it was such like a mysterious thing. I don't know the word that I'm looking at for there, but we
it was
just
kind of foreign,
mystified.
Yeah,
we really we're like, how are they doing that? How is this a thing? And so out of that, I think birthed, like I was saying, more than most other industries like combined. It's like all of these like gimmicks, I think, and different like niches of like how to do it, and like that's kind of the beauty, but also like what's led to a lot of the not niche-y, but segmented type things here. Is like there's just so many different ways to go about it that like we jump on teams and then people decide that one's the right way to do it or another, and then we get tied to those ideas, and then people start arguing and throwing stuff at the other party, and then here we are.
Well, Josh, I thought it was, I don't know how long ago it was, but I watched a video from you talking about like basically how your grandpap did it. Like he was obviously kind of the patriarch of like the hunting side of your family, and I think you said he had like a broken ass 22 and like a 20 gauge, but that's all he had, and he killed anything that he needed to kill with one of those two guns. And same with the fishing side, like he had a handful of rods and like John boat, and like that it didn't matter if he was bass fishing or catfish or crop, whatever. Like that's what he used. And like I thought that was a really good kind of reflection back to being like, I remember those days, like when I was in my, in grade school and middle school and probably even young high school, of like that was all I had too. And like if I had to go turkey hunting, like I probably use the same shotgun that I use for slugs for deer, or same shotgun I use for squirrels. Like it was so simple at that point, and it kind of in reflection is like, how in the hell did we get to like where we're at now?
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. And it wasn't that long ago. Like, I mean, I'm aging myself there, but like, I graduated high school, 20 years, just over 20 years ago. And at that point in time, I mean, I had mismatched camouflage. I shotgun hunted most of my things. I think I owned a 30-30 as well. I don't think I even had a 22. Like I just shot everything with a shotgun, small game wise. And like, and I had a compound bow, and that was it.
Yeah. It's gotten, I mean, I got more crap laying in this office that I don't use gear wise than my grandpa had, for his entire career of hunting. And yeah, I don't know what happened, if it's like a society issue or a hunting industry issue, or what, if it even is an issue. I don't know. I guess you got to spend your money on something. But it definitely seems like some of our issues we have are maybe self-inflicted with as much, wants that we have anymore, instead of needs. And I don't know, I struggle with a little bit because I have sponsors on my show and stuff that I have to promote, and I do like their products too, but it's just, there's so many options now too. And it's overwhelming for people.
It's interesting to try to like put our finger on like where we are at, like as an industry. You know what I mean? I think it's interesting to consider, you know what I mean? And like, we spent a lot of times talking about like, issues that we see with that, or benefits that come with it too. But it is interesting to look at, and you're not wrong. It's probably just a time frame of, and maybe it's just because we're living in it, it seems like this way, but it's like 10 years, maybe 15 at the most, that it seems like you've seen like the rise, and like, if you want to, call us in a pending demise, type of a status here. It's like you saw, and let's just take deer hunting, because it's the most people do it, and it has the biggest industry revolving around it. It's like it really peaked in the probably the late 2000s from like an industry standpoint. Would you say?
Yeah, probably.
Like
with the rise of like outdoor television,
like 2008 to 2010. Would you say that was kind of like the
a very much of a heyday, if you're talking about the industry itself, or you're talking about deer hunting period?
Talking about the industry, surrounding deer hunting.
I would say that was probably when most people would say it peaked. The counter to that, though, is I think there's probably more money in the industry being spent today than there was back then.
Excuse me. Well, Okay. I mean, elaborate, I guess.
But just the number of companies, the amount of money that people, per what we were just talking about with Josh, like the amount of money that people are spending on gadgets and things in the space, like I would say it's way greater. I mean, take it, the biggest being, and it's not to pick on them, but in 2010, I think I had one trail camera, right? I've got 100 now, probably, at least. Like, I don't know, you know, and I mean, how many other guys have 20, 30, 40 cameras out there? So, like, the amount of money being spent on things like cellular trail camera plans and stuff like that, I mean, is a massive, massive industry space. Whereas, like, back then, you know, you bought a bow, you bought camo, like, you bought boots, like, but you're buying one-offs. There weren't, like, we're now in a stage of, like, recurring expenses in hunting, which is really crazy. I mean, not that they're not good, but think about, like, the mapping softwares out there. And whether it's Spartan Forge or Onyx or Hunt Standard, whoever you use, you're in a recurring plan with that. You think about your cell cameras, you're in a recurring plan with that. Think about your hunting leases, you're in a recurring plan with that in a lot of them. Like,
the access itself is, I mean, I can't even imagine, like, if you looked at like a chart of like money spent for access, you know,
astronomical.
15, 20 years ago versus now, I bet it's like, you know, that industry almost didn't exist outside of like outfitters.
Well, Josh, you're in what, Southern Indiana?
Yep.
So, you know, I mean, one of our buddies was going through like financial numbers, and he's an advisor the other day, and I think he said like the 35-year gain in land on average was 2,000%, and the annual gain was like 8%. And so if you think about that, like 35 years ago, right, which was not that long, that was basically 1990. You were sitting at, if you bought land there, it's increased 2,000% since then. That's insane to think of. It's like how to even fathom 20 times more expensive. Like a $500 piece of ground now is $10,000 an acre.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I've been buying land in 1990.
I know, right? I mean, that
in my crib.
and again, like I'm dating myself because Jared wasn't even born in 1990. Josh, I don't know how old you were, but like that's not that long ago. You know, so when you see like these massive gains, and even with that, I would be curious, like,
it's 34 years ago.
Yeah, how many?
35.
How much has that changed in the last 15 years? Right, you talk about this heyday period. I mean, I think land in the last 10 years has exploded. Leases for sure have. I mean, I can remember my first lease 10 years ago paying $10 an acre or something for. You know, now, I mean, hard to get one under 50.
Yeah. Well, to go back to your, like, the issue with I don't know if you can call it a spending issue, but like just the amount of resources we put into hunting. You mentioned 2008, 9, 10, those years, man. That's really when the internet took off too.
Yep.
And before then, like my grandpa or my dad, when he was younger, you know, like you just didn't see this stuff. Like, you know, they bought whatever bow was at the local shop that the guy at the shop recommended. There was maybe a tree stand in there you could buy, maybe not. You went to the, you know, Tractor Supply, or we had Big Blue around here is what it was called, to buy your camo. And it's like, it wasn't in your face like all the time on the internet, flipping through Facebook on ads. So I don't know if it's just human nature and we just see that like, oh, there's something better. Oh, this guy has something better. Like I need that to keep up with him, you know? But it seems like a lot of this stuff stemmed when the internet really took off, to me, at least.
I would agree with that. I mean, because that, again, even back then, like, sure, you had like local, you know, buck pull contest and things like that, but there was no real like competition in deer hunting at that point. Like there was no like, cool, like, you know, Josh killed an 8-point. Like everybody was stoked about Josh killing an 8-point. It could have been a basket rack, didn't matter. Like, you know, he killed an 8-point. And so that, we were kind of talking about it. I just got back from NWTF and I'm looking at this expo and thinking like, number one, I can't believe there's that many people in here that care about turkeys. Number two is like, at the same time, I'm like, how is there not a deer gathering that like has this atmosphere? Because the one thing that I will say is like, nobody walking around that room was like in competition with each other besides the callers, right? Like, and that's just for a different level. But like, and it's because like, if the three of us went out and turkey hunted, it's like, if we all killed, you know, a 2-year-old Tom, like we don't give a shit. It's like, we all killed two. But if we're all out there to kill a mature buck, the competition blows through the roof. Not in a even a deliberate way between the three of us. It's just there's less of that resource out there. And I think that it probably has a giant effect on how the deer hunting community engages with each other. Whereas the turkey hunting or like DU and the duck hunting community, a flock of mallards come in and you blast a bunch of greenheads. Like nobody was like, oh man, I really wish I would have shot that one, unless it's like banded or something and you didn't even know it at the time. So it's a weird thing with the deer hunting side because, there's like this escalating hierarchy of like the trophy that these other communities don't have. It flattens out and basically puts everybody at ease, I would say.
Yeah. I never really thought about it like that, I guess. As far as turkey hunters or guys that are passionate about turkey not having that competition, I guess the only competition they would have is be access. Like we were just talking
access. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think anybody thought about the sport this much as we do now, back then.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's tied to information. I mean, I'm just like, taking in what you're saying there. It's like, whatever it was, I mean, maybe we're missing the date by a couple of years or something, but like 15 years ago, it's like we didn't know, first of all, what we were hunting. You know what I mean? It's like we thought, and maybe we saw one from a road or spotlighting or, we found a shed or, and guys had to spend time in the woods to do that. So you had, real woodsmen, if I'll say it that way, good hunters, were on, presumably bigger deer. But not only did most of us maybe not know what was out there, there was nowhere to put it, to publicize it. And even if there was, guys weren't doing it. That's, the internet stuff. So you had two major layers of like not knowing, and you can't fight over what you don't know is out there. So it's like, as we have information, I mean, especially trail cameras, whether sell or not, it's like you have pictures of these things now in the woods and a place in, social media or the internet to, for that to be out there somehow for people to know about, whether it's your specific deer or just big deer in general, for people to now squabble over. You know what I mean? I think that is what drives a lot of like the competition for it. And so, and in the early part of that, it was like, oh, well, you can find these things, I mean, that they're out there like on, on public land or on the, hey, the piece I have had permission on family ground or whatever, there's probably one out there, I found one with a trail camera. But as the demand for that grew and the realization that they were out there.
I mean, what do you think drew that demand? Like what grew the demand for it? Just the knowing that they were there?
Well, I think that certainly increased, like, yeah, maybe part of it, but definitely, competition for it. I mean, dude, I think that definitely, and I'm not trying to like skirt, a lot of people want to point and say the industry is to blame for, the big buck craze. And
partially,
I think, yeah, definitely there's an element of that, but I think that that it's just inherent. Like, I think it's just in us to want to like hunting is especially bow hunting and especially deer hunting. It's an maybe not at face value, but it can become an egotistical thing here where, if it's a challenge to go out and kill a deer with a bow, right? And the next challenge is, well, okay, I want to kill, one with big antlers. And then I start to consider like an age class of matured, it's all trophy elements. You know what I mean? I think that inherently it trends that way. You know what I mean? I think that we can just keep ourselves accountable, like between the three of us. We can say, hey guys, let's not let this get out of hand here. We need to value our friendship over hunting big deer, but it's there. I think we can all acknowledge that I don't know what it is in me, but if I see a big old deer, I want to kill it. I want to be the one in the room to kill it.
Yeah.
And not most people maybe are not as self-controlled as like, I don't want to say it can't get the best of us either. You know what I mean? I'm just saying that
sure
it exists. I mean, that desire to kill a big old one, it's just in us somehow. And
you think it's always been there?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It just seems weird
freaking
because
Moby Dick, dude. Like,
well, yeah.
You know what I mean? Take it all the way back. Guys want to kill the biggest, oldest thing they can and take it back to the tribe and shake it in front of them.
But like, I would say most of us grew up not doing that. Like, maybe I'm not saying that we didn't have the desire to kill, a big buck, but like, the first legal buck that came by me for whatever, the first 10, 15 years of my hunting career died or at least got slung at basically.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and you got to start somewhere. I mean, not everybody just, on day one, it's not like you're the lead, if I'm going to use the tribe analogy from the Indian stuff, it's like, you don't just start there. I mean,
well, I guess that's what, so Josh, I mean, let's just stick on your grandpap a little bit there. I mean, like, did you ever see him, I guess I would call it, like, evolve to like wanting to kill bigger deer, or was he always just like a deer?
Heck no, dude.
No. Me either.
He was going to shoot whatever was going to step in front of him.
Exactly. Same with my grandpa. So I guess I say that in that, like, why all of a sudden do we feel the need to evolve? Right? Because, like, our grandparents never did. I mean, my grandpa shot, I couldn't tell you how many 3-points in his career. Like, it was like an absurd amount of 3-points. Like, he would tell me he shot a 6-point. We'd walk up and I'm like, nope, that's 3-point. It's half rack or whatever. So, like, what triggered us to now say, well, we have to evolve?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I don't know. And it's definitely recent, right? Like, I mean, I would say even my dad, up until a certain point, maybe it's that 15-year ago point, would have, the first legal buck that came in front of him would have shot it.
Yeah, I think it's deeper. I think it's deeper than that. I mean, I think it's always been there, like a competitive nature or just ego in general has existed in mankind, like all,
Sure.
in all ages.
Yeah.
It's a recent thing that we're talking about it in deer hunting.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, it has to do with cultural, components as well. Because you're right. Like, I don't know. I think our dads just, they didn't know, or they didn't,
Mm-mm.
and not everybody's wired that way either. You know what I mean? It's
no.
Even today, you know what I mean? There's most people probably don't care. Not that they don't care, but they're not out there to shoot a big buck. They're just
sure. Yeah, first legal thing that they see, they're gonna kill.
Yeah, and that's fine. So it's not everybody.
Yeah, it just seems like as a whole that most of us have now, whether it's evolved and or like feel the pressure to pass young bucks, pass certain, like we feel the need that we've got to shoot mature deer, or we've got to kill big deer, or whatever it is. Like it, I do think some of that is the social side of, like, social media side of it. Like, I mean, we see that from a shaming standpoint, or just the peer pressure of like, man, I'd love to kill this whatever 1-year-old 8-point, but I know if I post that on Facebook, I'm gonna get tore apart by people. Right. And so like there's that aspect of it that for sure is not healthy in this space. And maybe, underlying that is the thing that's drove most people to now think like they've got to kill just big mature deer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're exactly right about like, I'm known to shoot a 2.5-year-old every now and again, like on an out-of-state hunt or something. It's the right time of the hunt.
Yeah.
And dude, it's like the people care about that for some reason.
I know.
They care about it a lot, and they want to tell you about it. And I think that's like where I like to think about, like, why do we care about this? Like, why do I care about this so much? Why does it bother me? But that guy is running 100 trail cameras or cell cameras. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a weird thing that we have, that we care so much about people doing things the way we think it needs to be done. And dude, in all reality, like, we can sit here and like nitpick all this stuff, but like at the end of the day, the states are going to get the deer killed one way or the other to their liking,
Yep.
Whether it be giving out more farmer permits or deprivation permits, or whatever the case may be, opening more longer seasons or more doe seasons, or making different caliber rifles legal on public land, or whatever the case may be. It's like, yeah, well, in the end of the day, it's like, we probably don't have as much control over it all as
that's what I was going to say, Josh, and we kind of pick on it a lot on this show, but it's the truth is, like, a lot of times if we say, whether it's about crossbows or baiting or whatever it is, right, they'll say, well, you shouldn't care about how other people kill deer. If it's legal, then I don't care. And it's like, okay, well, then I blame what's legal on the state. And I say that not because of like the jealousy of like they're going to kill, quote, my buck or anything, but it is a definitive resource, right? Like there are not an unlimited amount of deer walking around out there. There are not a limited amount of turkeys walking around out there. So the more liberal the state makes the opportunities, whether it's changing the calibers that can be used during a gun season, whether it's adding crossbows into it, whether it's lengthening season, whether it's adding more tags, whatever it is, the more liberal they make that, the greater the effect on the resource, which does affect me. No matter how I'm hunting or you're hunting, like if people always, and they will, because there is no self-restraint in 99% of human beings, they will always push to the legal limit. And they'll say, well, it's legal, so I can do it. My question always comes back to like, and this goes the whole way back to us saying like, look at all the gear and gadgets we have. Like if we're here in 15 years, like in the last 15 years, look what we have evolved. What happens in the next 10? Like, are we all going to be out there using thermals at night to just kill them? And are we all okay with that because it's legal? It very well could happen. Like Arkansas has proposed it to say, hey, let's go shoot them at night with thermals. Like, are we all just going to be like, yeah, it's legal, so what do you care? Like, yeah, clearly that's not, like, I would say most of us would say that's wrong, like, especially if that came out now, but I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I wouldn't want to see that happen, but also, like, if they made it legal, what the heck are we going to do about it?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. They just keep pushing the legality out further, and everybody just runs up to catch it, right? And so, yes, I think the industry is a lot to blame for where we are in the last 15 years. I think the states are as much responsible, if not more, because they've continued to push out the legality liberalization further and further.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt.
What can we say, man? Another year back with Hoyt. We're both shooting RX8s. I'm shooting 70 pounds in the bourbon, which I love bourbon.
That's great.
And you're shooting 80 pounds in the straight black.
Blacked out as always, man. I got so I'm shooting the 500 grain Easton Arrow this year. And at 80 pounds, I'm flinging that thing at like 300 feet per second. I mean, it's deadly. Put a water buffalo in front of me and he's done.
I mean, we shot it earlier. You literally put an arrow through a brand new target, like never been shot before.
I know. So one other thing that Hoyt is doing this year is they're making all their own strings in-house. And so the quality is top notch, and it just really is something that is setting them apart from their competitors.
Well, what we always try to do when we go to our bow shop, Ultimate Outdoors, is we try to shoot other bows just to make sure that we are really giving everybody a fair chance.
Sure.
The reality is it's a no-brainer. Hoyt stands above all of them every single time.
Definitely. And so right now you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, for 20% off any apparel on the Hoyt website. And as always,
get serious, get Hoyt.
Do you guys know if you kill more deer now than you did 15 years ago in Ohio or Pennsylvania?
I was looking at this just recently. So
it's very similar, isn't it?
It is very similar with a decreased amount of hunters in both states. Significantly in Pennsylvania. Like Pennsylvania's down 320,000 hunters or something like a giant amount.
Here, I'll cite the stats as best I can. I'll make a broad generalization, but I think generally, like speaking, if you look at deer harvest, somebody can correct me in the comments here, but I want to say generally speaking, like harvest numbers are relatively the same.
Stable. Unless there was like a big change, like Wisconsin got rid of Earn-a-Buck and stuff like that.
Right. But there are less hunters. And so, the biggest shift that you see is people joining the archery community, and so that would be with the introduction of crossbows that, either reactivated or activated hunters into that community, or it brought people over from the gun season. And so like the dynamic that we see here, and this is the crossbow argument that we have is not because it's like that we want to tell anybody how to do or anything, but it's putting a lot more people in the woods for a lot more time. Does it make sense? So
yeah,
if I take that in real world, what that means is 10, 15, 20 years ago, you had all these people, like a majority of people were gun hunters, and they just hunted, opening weekend or, 3 or 4 days out of the year. And they would do that on permission properties, family properties, whatever, to where now you have a majority of that harvest, as much as like 70% in some states happening with crossbows. And those people are now spending, I don't know what it is, but I would guess at least a week plus, in the woods to do so, which is great. They're, they're enjoying, they're recreating, and that's awesome that's happening. But it's put a really serious strain on the number of properties that are out there to do that. Not the deer herd numbers. That's remained relatively unchanged. That's why the states kind of don't acknowledge the problem. The problem is there's nowhere for people to go.
Yep. Agree.
Let me ask you this. Do you think, and this is just me thinking out loud, do you think our like trophy hunting mentality is to blame for that because we quit shooting does, we quit shooting all that stuff, and now all of a sudden the state's like, oh crap, we got to start giving people resources to fill tags?
Yes.
Wait, to blame for what? Is trophy hunting to blame for what?
By not harvesting enough like antlerless deer and things like that.
Dude, I used to shoot so many does and stuff for the freezer, for my dad, for my grandma, but all of a sudden, like now I'm like, I don't want to be shooting a doe because it may be a buck behind it, or she may come and heat this, bring me a buck this November. And
I do think so, man. The problem is I think that their thought process is if we make it easier, we give more opportunity, all of these things, that people will kill more does, and it's not happening. Like, it's not changing the mindset. Just giving more opportunity or more tags or whatever. Like, we see that in Pennsylvania all the time. Like, it's like, well, we'll just allocate more doe tags. Doesn't matter. Like, nobody, the mindset is I'm not shooting a doe for the first week of gun season because I'm waiting for a buck, then the weather's shitty and I never kill a doe. So it's, and part of that discussion is we think that they're, and again, purely opinionated, right? We think that a lot of it is because of the buck mindset. We need to be isolating antlerless only seasons to where during that season, you're not going to accidentally push a buck over to your neighbor and he's going to kill it or whatever is going to happen. Like, it's literally everybody's out there just for does. We did it in Pennsylvania for decades. It was 2 weeks of gun season for bucks only, and followed by a 3-day doe season. And we killed as many does in that 3-day doe season as we do now in a concurrent 2-week gun season.
Interesting.
And I think if you brought that back, you probably would kill more does if you really wanted to.
It's complex, man. We spent
we could sit here and think about it.
We spent 238 episodes, trying to figure it out, and it's happened for a lot of reasons. I mean, you can't make somebody want to shoot does. You know what I mean? It's just people want what they want. And I just think, generally speaking, like the reality, most people want to shoot big bucks. You know what I mean? In archery, it's like,
or a buck in general,
or a buck.
Yes.
And whatever that means to you, and so all the tools at our disposal allow you to where, here's how I see it, Josh. Now, like right now, we are in a situation where you have all of these people in the archery community. I would say most people, a lot of people, and most people who can afford to have, are occupying a piece of property either in their state or out of state, whether they lease it or they own it. The permission stuff is slowly dwindling. There's some still out there, I'm sure, but and they're monitoring these properties with cell cameras, for the most part. And the objective is to shoot a buck, right? And so you have most guys, like, they'll sit back and wait, and they'll plan the trip, and then if they shoot any deer off of it at all, it's probably a buck. And maybe there's a situation where they shoot a doe, but surely nobody's out there leasing properties so they can go shoot does. No. Maybe not one single person. And so the result is you have all these properties, sitting vacant of hunters. There's just one guy or a group of people that lease it, and then they go in and kill their buck, and then they're done.
Yeah.
And so you see an under harvest of does happening in a lot of states for that reason. And it probably has something to do with the overlap of buck and doe seasons too. Like, the three of us just said it, we're not going to jeopardize an opportunity at a buck to shoot a doe. So I think there's a season date element to it too, but it's not good, man. Like, I think all of it, and technology is a major driver of it. The more liberalized all these seasons have become, that doesn't decrease the demand for guys to shoot a buck and for a certain subset of us to shoot big bucks. And the ones with money are going to keep buying land and leasing all of it to insulate themselves from regulations that the state puts out there. And that, in my opinion, is what is creating further division between, if you want to call a rich class and a poor class of hunters.
Yeah.
And the states need to acknowledge that, frankly, they're looking at it just like that we're losing hunters. And so like Jeremy was saying, they just want to keep throwing more liberal season dates at it, more liberal technology usage. And they think that that's going to encourage people to shoot more deer. And what they're not realizing is that guys want to shoot bucks, and it's not going to change that mentality. So the guys with money that can afford to insulate themselves from those liberalized, everything, they're just going to keep occupying all the space to do it. And eventually everybody else is not going to have a place to go, or it's going to suck where they do have to go, and they're going to quit.
Mm-hmm.
And the states are all going to be there like, what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a buddy, I can't say his name on here, but he works with Indiana, Kentucky's DNR, Fish and Wildlife, whatever they're called down in Kentucky. I can't remember now, but man, he said he's been in some meetings recently that if we hunters don't start killing more does, that the states are prepared to take some pretty liberal actions to get some does killed.
Yeah, I think that's everywhere.
I mean, Missouri talked about putting a bounty on them.
Mm-hmm.
Basically paying you to shoot does like coyote bounties.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I've heard rumors of some drone technology they're starting to think about using to eradicate some deer. It's just like, man,
nuts. Well, and those are the things that the state is managing on a landscape level. And the bottom line is that the deer herd and populations has to be managed on a micro level. And so with the way that we're divided right now from leases and private lands versus public lands, we're completely at odds from a strategic standpoint of like how the deer herd should be managed. They're putting out the legality framework at a landscape level. Yet if you tell me I could kill five does on my Kentucky property, I would immediately come back to you and be like, I don't have 5 does to kill. Like there literally are not. There's not any deer on my property. They're still rebounding from EHD. 2 farms down, maybe they do. But like you can't, and if again, and I'm not picking on humans, but just the self-restraint not being there, if you tell them they can kill 5 does, they will try to kill 5 does, like in some of those places. Or if you tell them they can kill 3 bucks, they will try to kill 3 bucks. They'll keep filling tags till the end of the season is up. So those bounds are placed at this landscape level. But that is failing at the micro level, particularly when large chunks of land are literally just being monitored by cell cams and not being hunted at all. Other places, it's, they're going in and killing 1 buck and they're leaving and they manage 1,000 acres. And it's like they did 0 deer management to the entire property. They didn't touch the herd. They took 1 buck out of the entire herd and then blocked it off. So those landscape level recommendations are not effective to what is actually needing to be done on the micro level. And the counter for most of the agencies is, well, it's up to those micro landowners to then figure it out. Good luck. Because like I said, one guy's going to be like, I'm taking the biggest, most mature buck off the property every year, and that's it. He's against shooting does, whatever it is. The next farm over, they'll have 9 guys slammed in there, and they'll whack everything that moves, And so there is no consistency at that level, and I really don't think there's an average that balances out that meets the state's goals. They're going to have to start to figure it out on a local level. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to spiral out of control.
Yeah.
Sorry,
dude, I do know.
We're 38 minutes in. I didn't mean to get here this fast. So.
No, that's all right. Jared, you mentioned people. I know so many guys that, they own 500 acres and now all of a sudden they lease everything around. I mean, that's like their goal is to tie up as much land for themselves as possible.
Yeah.
And some of them don't even hunt the lands that they lease. They just don't want other people around their farm.
Exactly it, man.
Well, and do you know why that is, Josh? I think that the situation that drives that is they don't, because I'm one of them. I'm one of them. If I could afford to do that, and I can't, right? But I understand, putting financial resources towards trying to have, a a quality of deer on your property. I get it. I understand the motivation to do that. You think guys want to pay more than they have to do that, or drive to a state 9 hours away to do that? No. When they could be having it, more affordably or in an area that's closer to them? Of course not. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to spend money or travel unnecessarily. But the reality is the regulations in these states is what allows that situation to be happening. And so, and that's fine. You know what I mean? The state is managing the resource, I'm sure they feel to the best of their ability. But if it doesn't meet the standards of that person who can afford to expand, their land in a certain piece of territory, they're going to do anything they can to insulate themselves from that. And so we have always advocated for, here's what I think you would do. I think you need to make deer harder to kill, frankly. And that maybe goes in the face of what we're talking about with the doe thing. You know what I mean? So it's not, I'm not saying it's like a perfect fix for everything, but just generally speaking, we need to make deer harder to kill. Because if that was the case, you'd have an older age class and more trophy animals on the landscape, just period. And people would not need to own or occupy as much land, to achieve their goal. And so all the other things that I said kind of fall in line. I no longer need to lease 5,000 acres and just run cell cameras and shoot my one buck off of it. I can do that on my 200 acres, or whatever. And now that remaining 4,800 acres is open to hunting of other people who, chances are maybe they want to shoot some does or whatever. So I just think that the more privatization of that stuff that you have, the more people want to occupy more space in order to achieve a certain class of trophy animal, because that's what's happening, the more it's going to hurt the public's ability to manage the resource, and if that means shooting does, then great. So the answer is limit technology and stop making season dates more liberal. Make deer harder to kill, and I think things start to fall in line.
Yeah. I oftentimes wonder too, like, because what do we have, like 40 million deer tags sold last year, I think, in the U.S. It's like, dude, that's a lot of people deer hunting. And I wonder how many people actually think like we do compared to the vast majority of deer hunters,
Most don't. Yeah. The vast majority. It is increased, like, again, if we go back to 15 years ago, it was probably the 1% that thought the way that we're thinking. I think it's probably closer to 10 or 15% at this point that thinks the way that we think. Right. Still, the greater majority is just going out and, killing the first thing that they want to kill or whatever, But to the point of what you were saying about your buddy at the state agencies and what you're hearing, you need those guys, because those guys are probably the ones who are going to shoot does because they're just out there hunting, period. They're deer hunting. They probably want to shoot a buck, but I think they'd also shoot a doe. To our fault, I think we overthink a lot of that stuff, and thus that upper 10 to 15% is probably the worst at killing does because of the mindset around chasing big bucks.
And something else that I'm not saying we do this, because I don't, I know you guys don't, but like, then this 10% that needs these people just hate them. Like they criticize them for shooting their deer, and everything else is like, well,
yeah, it is what it is. You need them out there to do the herd management. That the hardest part, and I think, again, not picking on the states, but just in general of the mindset and even the segmentation amongst our like deer hunting community is that, and it depends what state you're in, but for the majority of whitetail states, right, the management that's happening on private land is why deer herds are succeeding in areas. Like the public land management is not thriving the deer herd in a given state. Especially when you look at like a state like Ohio, doesn't have a lot of public land. A state like Texas has hardly any public land. Like, it's private land in a lot of these states that's driving the success of the deer herd.
When you say success, you're talking about like an age. You're talking about age.
I'm talking about quality and even just herd population size. And that's partially because most of the public land, because of everything that we talked, is just getting overhunted. And so I'm sure, like, there's a reason that there's not a lot of deer on most of the public lands that people step on anymore. And it doesn't mean that they're killing them all, but just the pressure and everything else is displacing them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This might be a little bit off topic, but I saw my buddy. He has a farm around Cincinnati that he hunts in Ohio, and he's saying he saw some statistic that you guys killed like 21,000 button bucks this year in Ohio.
Yeah. Yes.
I've never looked at what Indiana's is, but
So
it seems like a lot.
So
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I accidentally shot a button buck this year. It was a freak thing that happened where it was with its its sister and its mom, and I had to like make a move around a tree, and they must have switched places or something whenever I was making a move, and I just smoked this little button buck.
Knocked the milk right off his
crap.
Yeah. So I had somebody brought that up, I don't know, a few weeks ago when those statistics came out. And one of the things, and I don't know, I'm just making like just an observation, is I would guess that a large portion of those button bucks are shed bucks shot late, and people just don't know that like a buck sheds like that. Like they shoot a 1-year-old shed buck and they're like, oh, I guess this is a button buck. Like they don't know.
Well, I forgot Ohio, you guys have such a late season too.
Yeah, till February, and it you have to check that in, and it asks you on that check-in, like, is it a button buck? Is it an antlered buck? And I assume most people are like, it's not an antlered buck, so it must be a button buck. And then so I think we probably kill more shed bucks than is reported, and less button bucks that is reported. But I don't know. That's just a standard thought of kind of talking through that side. Although button bucks are stupid and they get shot a lot.
Oh yeah,
that's true. Also,
I don't know, man. It's hard to put yourselves in. Like, we're such a diverse group. You know, it's hard to speak for, not that we're trying to, but for everybody. Everybody has different objectives and different ways of thinking about it. Not from an egotistical standpoint, but just like clearly we spend a lot of time thinking about it and talking about it. And I think there's a percentage of guys that do the same there, but it's so hard to get everybody on the same page, and like
it won't ever happen.
It won't ever happen, and that's fine. You know, I mean, I think just I don't know, like it's some days it seems more convoluted than others. It's like, you'd like to just see. We would like to see, I guess, like a healthy age class of deer and trophy animals on the landscape, and just the reality is, like, and you have to tackle it on a state by state basis. I mean, the more fine tuned you can get with that, the more accurate you can be. But like statewide, like, dude, guys, they don't care. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean,
the states are not managing for quality deer. Like,
some of them
just
are
not a thing.
Iowa is
not intentionally.
Oh, I think they are. They know.
Yeah, maybe, but the more they can maximize dollars, you know what I mean, and still retain some skeleton of that, they're gonna do. It's money and politics at the end of the day. Like we hear, Josh, maybe I've even heard you talking recently about like, hunters uniting and like having a majority voice, against anti and non-hunters type of a thing. And I'm like, I want to agree with that. I mean, I want to be like, yeah, that sounds good. Like we should have a consistent voice and be like, united in numbers and stuff. But like, look at all hunters. If every single hunter was united, like we're still not even close to like a majority.
No, we're like 5% of the population right now.
Right. And so I'm like, it's just not ever going to be like a majority rules type of a thing. It's more just of a, how do you do the best you can while keeping the non-hunting, not the anti-hunting, but the non-hunting community like okay with what's happening, which means keeping the deer herd numbers in check and not doing anything outrageous to piss them off.
Well, I think the rural states have the best chance at it, right? Because even though we're like 5% of the U.S. population, I don't know what the statistic is, but it's like 80% of the U.S. population lives in like major metropolitan areas, right? So like obviously, like even look at the electoral map, and it's like all red, and you're like, how's this even a race? It's because all the population lives in these bright blue areas. So when you think about states like New York, California, Illinois, even because of Chicago, probably Georgia because of Atlanta. Like as you start to look at these kind of major metropolitan areas, like they're gonna have a big fight on their Colorado and Denver right now. Like they've got a massive fight on their hands. Whereas if you go to probably like a Kentucky, a West Virginia, like those states probably are much higher proportion of the population in that state is hunters than as the overall average in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that it doesn't matter from the fight side of things, but even going back to what we talked about earlier, you'd have a better chance of like the duck hunting and the turkey hunting crowd being more uniformed in the fight than you would the deer hunting crowd. It's just like oil and water. We just don't blend together real well here.
Well, there's nothing to fight over. I mean, that's what it is. There's, turkey's a turkey and a duck's a duck, but not all deer are the same.
That's exactly what it is. It's a hard thing to comprehend of why we can't have like it's one of the main reasons we don't have like a national organization for deer. Like, yes, I know NDA's out there, but it's a fraction, whatever. Yeah. They're at 30,000 members and there's 10 million whitetail deer hunters out there.
Mm-hmm.
There's like, we looked the other day, Jared and I were looking at just cause it's always been a big topic now of like with the Doge stuff. It's like, okay, what are these, what was it? DU makes $300 million a year in revenue, and NDA makes less than $4 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, $300 million for Ducks Unlimited? What? I was like, I don't even know how many duck hunters are out there. Not nearly as many as deer hunters, that's for sure. And what was it? Even NWTF was at like 50 some million dollars. I'm like, what? This is crazy. And yet we can't, as deer hunters, 10 million of us. We're
definitely the most disagreeable
group. We can't form a forge ahead here at all.
That is what's a little bit scary is like you mentioned Western states like Colorado, how big of a mess they're in. It's like, man, a lot of that stuff kind of floats its way to the east eventually. It seems like, you know what I mean? Like,
yep.
Things start over there and they end up over here. So,
yeah, I mean, I would assume Illinois probably will see some factor of that here sooner than later because of Chicago.
Factor of what? What's happening?
Well, it's like the governor is doing all this ballot box biology, which is basically they're making the decision to pass to the general public to make decisions on like releasing wolves and stuff. And the public obviously is uneducated in this stuff but favors things like tree hugging and wildlife and so like the big discussion that like, and even Rogan was talking about this the other day is like, Colorado recently went to draw applications, right? And that's mainly because the elk herd is not doing well, right? So to take pressure off and to help that herd kind of bounce back, we're going to do draw applications. At the same time, ballot box biology just released more wolves into Colorado, which will destroy the elk herd.
Yeah,
like
way quicker than deer hunter or elk
yeah,
hunters.
Two completely different things. This is trying to achieve a healthy herd in management, and this completely destroys it because the public, who is uneducated in it, decided, yeah, we like wolves. Like wolves are great. Put them in play.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and that's essentially what I'm saying about some of like the technologies in like these eastern states. I mean, I guess. I'm applying it to like our micro level conversation here, but it's like in the same way, I feel like most hunters, this is what you see in the comment section. If you say something about, wanting to limit crossbows, a majority of hunters, per the statistics will say, we want crossbows during the archery season, or whatever it is, apply it to like, cell cameras. A majority of hunters, I guarantee it, will say, we want cell cameras.
Mm-hmm. Why?
Yeah, because it allows them to be more effective, and it does, it's a technology that increases lethality, but, and this is where we say like, somebody's got to be the adult in the room is like, you have to understand the implication of that. It's like, okay, well, if everybody has that technology, everybody has that ability, here's the dynamic that's going to create. It's going to create competition between landowners. It's going to create
drive prices up.
It's going to drive prices up. It's going to create a division between an upper and lower class of, financial people that are participating in it. And so is that, to put that back to the voters or to the hunter, you say, is that what you want?
They can't comprehend that.
No, but, so there's that disconnect. It's got to be the responsibility of somebody. And it is the states that are, making the legislation and setting the state to interpret what hunters may want.
Mm-hmm.
And also every other stakeholder acknowledge, I'm fully on board with like, hey, deer hunting is not the only thing that exists. So
sure.
If people in Ohio are like, citizens are like, hey, we want less deer. Okay. Then maybe that has to be the case. But what we see happening is just more ability to kill bucks, because that's what guys want to do.
Mm-hmm.
They take that legislation and they apply it directly to what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a misdiagnosis of what that will do.
Yeah.
Does it sound right, Josh? Does that make sense? You know what I mean? Jeremy and I are kind of like our own echo chamber, but does that dynamic?
No pun intended, Josh.
Does that make sense? I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's like, but can every state be a trophy Iowa state? It's like, probably not. Iowa's unique because there's not as many hunters.
Mm-hmm.
No crossbows. It's the only state at this point that doesn't have crossbows in your archery season.
Mm-hmm.
Which they're poking at that bear right now. I mean, or they did last year.
Gun season's after the rut.
Yep. So we don't know.
But
there's simple regulation
you
changes.
got to wait 5 or 6 years to go hunt there.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you want every state to be that way? I mean,
it would take the pressure off. That's there's a large group of people that will say, well, if every state didn't screw up their own stuff, then Iowa wouldn't be as desired. To a point, I would agree with that. I think that's
definitely true.
Yeah, I think that the hard part on the technology side is that I don't know if there is anyone out there from a whitetail deer hunting perspective that would argue that access is not becoming a significant issue, or is a significant issue. Mm-hmm. It's the number one thing. But I feel like the discussion around, okay, why is access becoming? Nobody's really having that in a clear, concise, like we're all coming to an agreement that these are the problems.
It's a demand for big bucks. It's honestly, I see it pretty black and white. It's a demand for big bucks is what limits access.
Mm-hmm.
And demand is driven directly by supply. It's like,
there aren't many of them.
It's economics 101. So it's like, if you had more bucks on the landscape of the entire country, you would have, less demand put onto one state.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see the problem with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, okay, so if that is the why that access, then it's being like, okay, what's the what that is causing the limitation of access?
Lethality.
Yep. The technology, the season limits.
Deer being easy to kill.
And it's like, just connect the dots there. And if
it seems so simple, doesn't it? It's like it's frustrating.
Even if we're all if we are a very segmented group of whitetail deer hunters, it seems like we should be able to come to the table and say, okay, let's lay that out. Like, there's the framework, right? And if we identify, like, hey, and again, we know the history here. It's like, go back 15 years ago, like leasing in Pennsylvania wasn't even a thing in 15 years ago. We didn't even hear about it. Now it's like every farm is leased around me. And so if it's like, okay, 15 years ago, what didn't exist that exists today that's causing that? And you connect the dots to things like cell cameras, crossbow legal. Like, I'm not saying that you need to retract all of those things, but there probably are some low-hanging fruits that you could put some limitations on, and then people go, well, we don't want more government, blah, blah, blah,
Here's the dark future, Josh. I think that, like, if something doesn't change, I think these are two things happen. Number one, rich guys put up fences. Number two, poor guys quit hunting because they don't have access, and the experience sucks. So, I mean, that's the extreme end road of the division, of rich people and poor people, if we're going to classify them as such. That's what happens, and there's people that will do everything in their power to make money or, to have this result. And if that means they have to fence it, then, so be it. And everybody else is going to be out. And nobody wants that, including the people that can afford to do it right now. So it just takes somebody realizing the dynamic that's happening here and to get ahead of it.
Mm-hmm. HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Pure Wildlife Blends.
Yeah, buddy. We're doing a lot of food plots this year. It seems like the planning, the preparation, like the coordinating for getting everything, in the ground, is like it just never ends.
Yeah, and I just got off an 18-hour bender where I'm on multiple farms getting everything ready. But this year, fortunately, we've got Pure Wildlife Blends, which is Jeff Sturgis. Who better to partner with for our food plot program than a guy who's got 30 years of experience, been on thousands of farms. I mean, the guy lives and breathes food plots.
Yeah, and so the blends themselves are all handpicked by Jeff, and it's like, man, we've had a lot of conversations with him over the years, and he's been pretty influential on how we set up farms and stuff. And frankly, the product, it's in a name. It's Pure Wildlife Blend. So a lot of these other seeds that you see that are blue and orange and all these things, it's because they're coated with lime and they're dyed, and it's marketing at the end of the day. So we have a lot of confidence in the seeds that Jeff has chose, and that's what we're going to be planting this year. And so right now, you can use code HUNTR10 for 10% off anything on the website.
So if you're looking for switch, clover, brassica, or Jeff's favorite, layer in the rye.
Layer in the rye.
Yep. Check out purewildlifeblends.com.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we find ourselves in the rut of that conversation sometimes, but it's just like, man, it's like, and we care too much, to let that happen. We're not at that point yet, and we have a platform here to talk about it. So I know people get frustrated about, like, we get it, the crossbow things, and I'm like, dude, I'm tired of talking about it too. I just want to see it fixed.
Yeah, it's a weird thing that we care about so much too. Like, I don't know. I was thinking about this yesterday. I was like, I shot this like real big, it's like 57-inch deer a few years back, and I was thinking about, like, would my life change if that was a 130-inch deer? Like, no, it wouldn't have. But for some reason, it matters to me, and probably only me. Like, a lot of my buddies don't even remember me killing that deer,
Yeah.
And we put a lot of thought and energy and, like, frustrations into things that it's like, well, at the end of the day, it's probably going to end up hanging in a Cracker Barrel somewhere after I die and my kids sell it or something.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. I mean, we definitely have to keep these things in perspective, like, they are just deer at the end of the day. And it's like, so I don't know. We walk that line for sure. It's like, you want to keep it in perspective, but also it's an unbelievable resource. Like, it gives us, like, an entire, like your life can almost be built around it in a way. Not that it's like solely dedicated to killing that animal, but it's like it is a lifestyle. You know what I mean? And it's it can be a healthy one. You know what I mean? Like the management of that, like the pursuit of that, can be healthy. It can get out of hand too. You know what I mean? We've seen that. That can definitely happen. But
I think the big part is like, part of our journey in this podcast, and just, as deer hunters and managers ourselves, is that, ultimately we realize that what we're chasing is the experience, and that's going to evolve as we get older. Like, I'm in a stage now where, like, man, I wish I had the deer camp experience I had with my grandpap and my uncles and my cousins and, all of that. And, like, I'm trying to, like, recreate it, and it won't ever be the same, but I'm just at least trying to figure out how to do that. And so, as a broad scale community, it's like, if your goal is not to kill, like, a big mature buck, that's fine. But, like, what experience are you chasing? Because, like, you're out there trying to do something. Is it just because you want to be in the woods because it's quiet and, like, I don't know, you get to just sit out there and be in nature? Is it because you're trying to put meat in the freezer? Is it because, you want to introduce your kids to something to keep them off of video games? Like, I don't know what it is, but everybody has some sort of mindset of experience in the end result. And one of the biggest, I think, reasons we started this podcast is, like, we want people to have a good deer hunting experience. And the way we are going, we can see that it's going to end poorly for a large amount of deer hunters.
Yeah.
Their experience is already declining, and eventually they'll just quit. And I think because of, like, what we talked about earlier with the, like, 10% of us who are focused on this, or 15, and then the rest doing this, if a bunch of those people in that 85% group quit, I think our experience is going to end up changing as a result, because the state is going to have to step in from a management side, and we're not going to like it. Whether that's them enforcing things on lands we own, which we really won't like as landowners.
Yeah, that would be good.
Right. But that's what I'm saying is, like, so, if people are always like, well, you're picking on these. No, like, I'm picking the people, like, in our group that are very serious about this and are landowners and stuff. We have to wake up that if those people go away, we may not even have control of our own herd on our own property.
Yeah.
So
and you got to realize too that, like, some people's experience they want to go and kill a bunch of does over a corn pile with a crossbow. It's like, that's their right too. Like, that's what they want out of it.
And as long as it's for the right like if they can justify the reason, then to a point I don't care. Like if it's like, well, I want to kill 3 does, or I want to kill a buck and 2 does, and that'll fill my freezer, and we eat venison all, most of the year. Awesome.
Well, I don't even think they have to justify it. Like, I don't care. Like, if that's what you're into, then great. Like, we fully endorse like anybody hunting for whatever the reason is, or and I'm not even advocating that people shoot a certain class of buck. Like, I really don't care. And so I think that's where the conversation gets sidetracked sometimes. Some people take offense. They're like, well, don't tell me how to hunt, and vice versa. And so
and
go ahead.
I hear that. Sorry to interrupt you. I hear that argument all the time from like, I don't want to keep saying crossbow hunters because it's just a good example.
Yeah.
But like, you hear it from the crossbow guys that love their crossbow, and like, they think we're out to get them. And it's like, no, it's not that. It's that we feel like it's hurting the resource for everybody. You know what I mean?
That's right.
It's not that we, it's nothing against them or whatever. It's just like, I'm not trying to take away from what they're doing. It's
That's fine.
It's just like, it seems like it's not a good way of managing the deer herd, but, and I don't know if that's, I don't even know how I feel about most of this stuff still. So like, it's always ever changing.
Well,
we don't know either.
Well,
man.
dude, and our opinions might change. That's the beauty of it. They can change. I mean, you're not condensed just to your ideas there. But and dude, there's no point in tiptoeing around it. Like, crossbows are the thing that has changed the dynamic of the archery season, all seasons, frankly, more than anything. Yeah. Besides, potentially, cell cameras would be the other thing that we throw in there. But like, it's black and white. I mean, you can see just a shift of when those get introduced into an archery season. People move out of the gun seasons and into
and they usually spend significantly more days of field.
Yeah, which just means it's a longer season, and so there's more to do there. It's not bad or a wrong thing. Like, anybody in their right mind would do that. Like,
yeah. Like, clearly, when they opened archery seasons, people moved out of the gun season and went into compound archery or longbow or recurve, whatever was available.
There's a strong argument that you say, I'm an idiot for hunting with a compound bow because I can't shoot as far in the same season as I could with a crossbow. It's less movement. It doesn't take as much effort. So maybe I'm the dumb one.
Yeah. Something else I just thought about too is like, in Indiana, at least, man, like our gun season used to before crossbows, and I didn't really correlate it to that particular time frame until now. But like, you would go and set opening morning, and you would hear like 100 shots in the morning. And now you go and I hear, maybe 15 or 20, if that's a big deal,
Spot
so maybe
on,
they
man.
maybe that was their plan is like, we kind of, these archery guys had it too good for this many years, and everybody's hunting deer in gun season, so we'll spread it out a little bit. I don't know.
Well, no, man, I think that's a great point. That's a really interesting thing. Like, I've heard more of that in Pennsylvania in the last couple of years too, because like traditionally the gun season in Pennsylvania, very, very traditionally based, very big economic boom for a lot of the communities where people would go to the Northwoods and have deer camps and things like that. And for the last 10 plus years, like the opening day and it's like nobody's out in the woods, and you're like, this is weird. Like, wow, or is it a deer thing? Like, what's going on? No. Everybody already hunted in archery season, and we're killing their deer in archery season with a crossbow. And so I'm not saying that like one is right or wrong, but like, you've definitely changed the dynamic of the archery season, the early season, and how those deer were hunted and how many deer were removed during that season. And you've changed the dynamic of the gun season and how many deer were removed at that. Now, again, from a landscape level, maybe the state's like, I don't care as long as deer get killed. We don't care. But that has to have had some pretty big like herd dynamic changes to flip from most of the deer being killed after Thanksgiving with a gun to now most of the deer being killed, by mid-November with bows or crossbows.
I mean, I feel so strongly about it. We are living in a post crossbow inclusion world. That's literally, if you look at the trajectory of like, most people would even say that the whitetail herd in terms of trophy quality peaked in that same time frame we were talking about, like 2008 to 2010. And, ever since then, the demand for them has increased. The access to them has decreased. The technology, that's allowed to use, has only increased since then. And we're still on like kind of a downward trajectory in terms of like, quality of the resource is. And so I don't know. It's a tough one because it almost seems like you're never gonna. It almost like
I'm never going to recover from this.
I don't think you can come. I don't know how you can come back from that. Even if you were to limit it, I don't think that guys aren't going to like sell, get out of their leases necessarily or sell their properties. It's kind of like the access transition has happened here. Like it's just the world that we live in now. And I don't know. There's other things that you can still continue to manage, but it's wild how that dynamic has shifted, and it's not at all the fault of the crossbow hunters. I need for them to hear that from me. I don't blame anybody for choosing that method.
It's legal.
But I do think that the states made some irreparable damage by allowing for
Why
that
do you
to
think
happen.
they made the initial decision? Because they thought that the loss of hunters would stop?
Oh, no. I mean, it was financially driven. You know what I mean? There was lobbying from crossbow companies and maybe they saw license revenue out there, increase for, and frankly, I don't think they could have foreseen.
But has it?
The damage.
And has license revenue increased?
I don't know.
I assume they sell a lot more crossbow license now than they did.
Crossbows and archery stamps.
Mm-hmm.
But I would still sell. People still buy gun tags too, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would say you're right. From a lobbyist side, we know that just because we've talked to some of the people at that level from a lobbying aspect. But from like a management side, I would assume that they thought, much like the other things that they're doing, that it would keep people from quitting, whether it was just older or just bring more people in the archery season and the weather is more favorable. But it hasn't stopped people from leaving. Like, we're still bleeding out in most states.
Right. Well, because it created the dynamic that we're talking about.
I know. That's how was the foresight not thought through on that?
Sorry, Josh, go ahead.
Do you guys know the dynamic of people aging out of hunting and the young people coming into it? Like, is that shift going, too far to the right? Like, is there way more old people leaving the hobby than
young
people? So maybe that was their thinking, like, oh crap, all these guys that deer hunt are getting to be 50, 60 years old and they're going to stop bow hunting, and
sure,
we got to give them a tool to keep hunting. Or
just change your senior license age and make it applicable for seniors then. Like,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's it. And again, part of it's the technology side, which I know we beat to death, but it's like 15 years ago, dude, I didn't know a single able-bodied dude who would be caught dead shooting a crossbow. Like, it was, I mean, they could have ripped their rotator cuff and they would still been like, I ain't shooting one of them. Mm-hmm. And I know it's technology has changed but like, again, what else has changed? Is it just that like the marketing and the industry? Like, I think the industry is probably the most to blame from a crossbow standpoint.
In what sense? They're
the ones who lobbied for it. Nobody else was lobbying for it and saying, hey, this is the best thing for the deer herder. This is the best thing it was purely money based.
Sure.
The industry, the crossbow industry, is the only one who created the crossbow industry.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and you got to give us some credit. I mean, they killed it. You know what I mean? They made a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Changed a lot of the seasons, and it's thriving. Their businesses are.
For now.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what do you think, Josh? You know a lot of people in the industry, and like coming from like the hunting beast background there and stuff. I know Dan is big on, if not exclusively on public land or stuff. I mean, what are you seeing from a pressure from just a season dynamic standpoint?
Public land pressure. 3 years ago, I would have told you like this seems to be overblown. Like, I'm not seeing, because I hunted all over the country for a while there. Like, I was going everywhere before I had kids and stuff. I was like, man, I'm not seeing this pressure that everybody else is talking about. But then the last couple of years, it's been a drastic shift for around here, some other states that I've hunted. I'm like, wow, there are way more guys out on the landscape, on the public land scene, at least.
Yeah.
I don't know if a little bit of that is because I think it's a bunch of stuff, but like a little bit of it is like it become cool to hunt public land again with the advent of like the hunting public guys and, all that kind of stuff. And then there's probably a little bit of the access issue where guys are losing ground that they've hunted forever. Maybe they're just normal blue collar guys, and the guys with money are leasing them out from underneath them, and they got to go hunt public land now. Dan's talked about around him. It seems like this last couple of years, he's seen a drastic increase in folks running around on public land. Yeah. Is it an issue? I don't know. It probably is a little bit of an issue. There's all kinds of people that get blamed for that issue. So
Sure.
That's a mess.
Yeah. I mean, Josh, are you hunting mainly private or public, or where do you hunt?
Yeah, I just wherever I can find a good deer. I have some private around here I can hunt. I don't have any leases. It's all just, as they call free permission, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just some stuff around my house here. None of it's big acreage or anything, but this year, like in Indiana, I hunted primarily public land.
Mm-hmm.
Not by choice though. It's just that was where I had the biggest deer at.
Yep. That makes sense.
This year.
Yeah.
But dude, if I can get on private land, I'm going on. I mean, like if I can get a good piece of private, I'm not one of those guys. That's
I know.
Yeah.
Like Iowa, I hunted Iowa this year, and I got a buddy that lives out there and let me on his farm. He's not a deer hunter; he's a farmer. So I'm like, heck yeah, dude. That's where I'm hunting.
Yeah, no doubt, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's a silly argument. I mean, I see it too. It's out of like standing your ground. If I didn't have access to private ground, I would probably be that guy. It'd be like,
I mean, I have access to a lot of private ground, and I still have cameras all over the place on public because I'm kind of like Josh, like wherever the biggest deer is right. That's what I'm gonna hunt.
Right. Yeah, and so it's not to say that we're not that guy in some senses. Go ahead.
It's pretty funny because like you got these public land purists that like almost are judgmental to people for killing deer on private, but then they're going to complain about too many people on their public land. It's like, well, quit complaining about the guy shooting them on private if you don't want, people coming to your public. Like,
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I mean, I think that, the conversation we have with like maybe the, call it like the public land purist side of things is like, I kind of feel bad because they're not as much hunting the deer as much as they are avoiding everybody else on the place and then finding the deer. Like I want to hunt a deer because the deer's doing deer things, not because, there's 15 other guys over on this side of the public and I came through the back door and I'm up by the swamp and like now I know he's going to get pressured into this. Like I'm not saying there's no skill in that because there absolutely is. But from a pure like one-on-one with the deer, that's not it.
Yeah, well, it's it's a front to a point. It's like, and I love those guys. I say it out of love, you know what I mean? But it's like, dude, who is going to seriously sit there and say like, I prefer to have guys, walking in on me, and I prefer to have to, bounce around because I'm dealing with hunting pressure. Like it's an inconvenience. It just is, And
there are people like that though. I mean, there's guys like you guys. I know Johnny Stewart real well. Like the dude, he is a guy that he just loves hunting his public land. Like he has no desire to hunt private.
Listen, I love Johnny. He thinks he does.
Oh yeah.
Rendell Eric is in the exact same boat. That guy will sit here and tell you like, a year ago even, he'd be like, I'm a public land purist. That's the only way I do it, And I'm like, dude, we're friends. Like, just be real with me. And then he's like, yeah, piece of private sounds pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's not like you lose if you say that. It's like, yeah, dude, it's like, of course, who wants to compete with people? That's just, anyone would strive to have this. The American dream is to own land or have access to a piece of property like that. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you guys. I like to have some private to hop around on that. I don't have to worry about things. Of course, I mean, sometimes you got to worry about stuff on private land too, but
sure,
not
absolutely.
always.
Well, and I mean, to the defense of some of the public guys, especially with what we're seeing today, like I'm also not wanting to hunt a piece of private that's, fenced in on 2.5 sides and, doing this and that. Like that's not fair chase either, in my opinion. So, I think there's a fine line there. And unfortunately, that side's getting more and more prominent. I understand, but I don't understand that in the grand scheme of things. So, yeah, it's just finding that middle ground where it's like we like the manipulation side of things in terms of food plots or TSI or whatever. But at the same time, like I don't want to experience that far to the other side of it.
Yeah, well, to endorse Johnny's way of thinking, like there is a freedom that comes with public land, like because you know, nothing else gives you access to that much acreage. Like if you're going to just wholeheartedly, take on that approach, you're like, okay, hey, I got whatever it is, I got 30,000 acres, 300,000 acres, depending on what piece of public you're on. Yeah, you may have to contend with, some guys here and there, but there's definitely, it is an access option, and it does give you that sense of freedom. And Pennsylvania has one of the best setups of any state, for whitetails. We have a lot of public land here. Where you can get away from that pressure. So yeah, I'm not dissing on those guys at all. And Bo, I know those guys do a lot of the same stuff. So
yeah, I think the purist thing is an interesting mindset though around it.
Yeah. And Johnny's not like that. Like he doesn't care what you hunt, but he loves hunting his public land.
Yeah.
He's also one of the best hunters in the country. So like, it's like, some guys aren't that good at hunting and they want to go on their pride, you know what I mean? Like, it's tough sometimes.
Yeah, well, and it's also, I mean, Johnny spends a lot of time scouting. Like right now, that dude is in the woods almost every day scouting. A lot of people don't have that luxury, right, to go out and be able to do their homework so that they can be successful during the season. So,
he's definitely an extreme case. Like, I love him to death, man. We talk quite often.
I mean, that dude going out in the middle of the night to basically hang and check trail cameras. I was like, why? He's like, well, they're just up and moving, and like I'm not going to go in and bump them. I'm like, okay. I was like, man, that's cool.
I drove over to his cabin in Ohio one night, and it was late, dude. It was like 10 o'clock. I got there, and I'm like kind of ready for bed, and he's all fired up. He's like, come on, Teulker, let's go check some trail cameras. I'm like, what? And he's like, let's go check some trail cameras. So I'm like, all right. We went off into the public land looking for his trail cameras. Of course, he didn't have anything hardly marked or anything, so we're
just walking around, stumbling in the dark.
He gets pretty good at walking straight to him, but I'm like, what are we doing, dude?
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, it's a different, and I mean, but there's a great example of where like that's the experience that Johnny loves. And so, and ultimately, and he'll tell you, like, sure, he absolutely wants to kill a big buck, but dude, that dude just loves scouting and finding them. Like, the kill of them is obviously a pinnacle part of that, but like he would spend the rest of his life just going out and scouting and finding big bucks. Like that's what he loves to do, and I get that. That's a cool aspect of it. And so it's just like the part of the whole discussion we're having here is like, okay, how does Johnny have the ability to continue having that experience with the trend that we're going? Maybe. But if more and more people start getting displaced off of private, that public land experience and finding those big deer will probably decline. Like it's just because of the space aspect of things.
I mean, man, the sport just has, and I don't mean to call it a sport, but just, hunting has so much to offer, and Johnny's approach there and what he's doing, that's certainly one of them. And if I could have that incorporated into my season every year, I would, like, because we've done that, and I see the appeal of that. It is exhilarating. But I've also experienced, a hunt on a private piece in Iowa, with some of the biggest deer in country, and I'm like, man, that is pretty hard to top, also, and everything in between. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I think leading into each season, it's like you try to prioritize what you want out of it, and realize there's only so much time to do it, and so you just. That's the beauty of it. We try to get as much of it in from season to season as we can, and that's all you can do, I guess.
Well, Josh, what'd your season look like this year?
No, it wasn't too bad. It feels like a big failure because I didn't end up shooting a deer in Indiana, but I killed a decent deer in Iowa, and I killed a pretty nice deer in Tennessee too.
Was that during like one of the early seasons, like the velvet season?
No, it wasn't. I went down there and hunted during the velvet season, and you only get a couple days there.
Yeah.
We got on some big deer, but we just ran out of time. We got on a freaking giant. Anyway, and ended up killing like a nice just a nice Tennessee 8-pointer during their rifle season,
Cool.
which was fun. I hadn't really rifle hunted a whole lot the last handful of years, so that was kind of fun to go do. Iowa was good. I had the flu while I was there. It was kind of miserable with you. Yeah. Had like a bad cough and running temperature the whole time. But it was still Iowa. Like I was only there for 2 days. I ended up killing just a decent 8-pointer, but it was cool. I mean, you'd see, $15 in a day and stuff you don't see here in Indiana.
Yeah. It's interesting when you kind of
was that an archery tag?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was like a 5-year process for putting in for that, and that was is it the first time you've been?
Yeah, hunting wise, yeah, I've been out there scouting and stuff before.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
6 more or 7 more years, and you can go back.
Yeah, there we go again.
Yeah, we did the same thing, dude. I mean, this past year was our first year.
We're on the restart at this point.
It took us 5 years or whatever.
Yeah, back.
Yeah, it's a long waiting game now. It seems like. So I've been looking into like other units and to go, but that's not quite as long of a time wait. But I don't know. I got that private I can hunt in zone 4. So
yeah, which is awesome.
Kind of yeah,
I think we just try to find the other things because, like, we don't hunt for a living, so it's like we only have so much time anyways for like the home farm. So it's like this year will probably be Kansas, maybe North Dakota. We'll see. Mm-hmm. But like if you can rotate some other things into those fillers before you know it, you're like, oh, in 2 years we're gonna draw again or whatever it is.
Yeah. Kansas. I'll probably draw Kansas this year. I got a couple points again now. So, man, I've grown to really love going down to Tennessee. I've been down there. I've killed 2 bucks down there now. And, I just, I don't, the odds of shooting something like over 150 aren't real good, but
yeah,
it's, I don't know. I got a buddy that lives down there and we go and hang out, and I almost rather just go down there than anywhere else.
It's a cool state, man. That's what I like. I like hunting. I've got places in Kentucky, and like I like being in Kentucky and hunting, and there's a chance for big deer for sure. And it like the early start is definitely a nice advantage to everything else opening up like more in October time frame. So yeah, it's just trying to spread the time out because obviously you can only be in one place at one time, and so when that cold front comes through in late October or whatever, it's like you're not going to be in 3 different states. Just pick one and got to go for it.
Yeah. And in Tennessee too, like if I go down there and turkey hunt, it's like a game license where you just buy one license that covers everything. So it's just easy for me. And I don't know, it's not that expensive when you consider it, if you go down there and kill a turkey and you kill a couple bucks.
That makes it nice.
Do you have somebody that you do most of your hunting with, Josh, or is it just kind of you have people like you see, got a buddy in Tennessee or?
Yeah, no, my buddy Patrick, he does a podcast with me sometimes over on my channel. He lives down there. He used to be a Memphis police officer, and he had a whole bunch of properties inside the city limits in there, and he killed some like Lee Ellis type deer down there. Some big deer. He doesn't hunt there anymore, but he has a couple of farms that he can hunt that he lets me go on around there. But dude, I usually prefer to be by myself when I'm on a hunting trip. Just like to do my own thing and, not have to worry about what other people are doing or, stepping on anybody's toes or anything.
Yeah. Right.
So
yeah, do you do this? Do you do the Before That Go podcast? Is it full time?
No, I have a day job too. I did it full time kind of for about 2 years. I had a consulting business in the ag industry where I worked for myself, and then I did the podcast, and then the company I did a bunch of work for ended up hiring me back on again eventually. Or back on full time, just kind of shot me an offer I couldn't refuse. But I work from home and pretty flexible with my time. So
yeah, nice.
It's a good job for a deer hunter to have.
Does that give you pretty good flexibility during the season?
Yeah. Yep. You know, you always have your obligations and stuff, but for example, like my boss is from the United Kingdom, so his day starts at 2 a.m. So I
Oh,
can always
wow.
get up and do some stuff, or try to fit it in when I can. So, yeah.
Is that how you made your contact with your Iowa farm guy?
Working in the ag industry is a good industry to get into.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah. I used to. It wasn't through them, but I used to work for an egg producer.
Yep.
And they have farms in Iowa, Missouri, and you make friends with people that work at those farms, and they got land or whatever the case may be. So
lays the groundwork for sure.
It does, man. And yeah, and I tell everybody, like, dude, don't be shy about being a deer hunter, because you'd be surprised if you're at work, or if you got, a lot of companies are big now. So like if your factory job has a plant in Iowa, it may be good to try to make some buddies over there in that factory,
Yeah, seems like the right way to be.
Absolutely.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Rack Hub.
Well, dude, sheds are starting to hit the ground.
Yeah, and although we usually don't find many of them, we've done pretty well this season so far.
I would say for just, a handful of walks, we've got a pile of sheds to show for it. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, if shed season would end today, I think it was pretty successful.
So this year we're partnering with Rack Hub. It's an antler mounting system for your sheds.
Yeah, and obviously people have watched our podcast. We've got this massive pile of sheds that are on the table at all times, but you guys took the time to set up Wide Boy's shed on the R1, which is a really cool way to now have that thing right off to my left-hand side during the podcast.
So some of these sheds just call for a little bit more appreciation, I guess. So rather than being on a pile on the table, we're going to mount them on the wall, and they look awesome. So
yeah. And so if anybody wants to try Rack Hub, you can use the code HUNTR10, HUNTR10 at rackhub.com to get 10% off your order.
Use Rack Hub to make the most of your shed season. Well, dude, what are, I know this is kind of like a pie in the sky thing, but what is your plan here with the channel? I mean, is it just kind of just chugging along? I mean, do you have, goals to grow it, or, what are you doing?
Yeah, I do. I have goals for it. I'd like to get it as big as I can, at least in the way I want to grow, I think, it took me a few years of messing with the channel to figure out how I wanted it to look like and what I wanted it to be. And it's evolved kind of a lot. And I really want it to be a platform where people can go and like think about deer hunting instead of just like, aimlessly either being in some echo chamber or watching just, you're just watching deer tip over or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And to be fair, like I'm just a one-man band. So like,
yeah,
I don't have the time to produce a whole bunch of cool, real edited deer hunting content. There's some of that over there, but a lot of it's just me, like you guys said, just talking to the camera for 10 minutes and then shutting it off.
Yeah, no doubt. I think Jeremy and I guess I'll speak for myself. I find it so interesting, just like how people perceive it, differently. It's wild to have, because we get so in our heads about like, it's all I think about, it's like I lay at night thinking about, how I'm going to burn through this section of timber, and it's,
yeah,
with the goal of, growing bigger deer and having a better hunting experience. And I just love to do it. I love the management aspect of it. And then, every day you're going to encounter people who aren't hunters, who don't do any land management, and it's funny to like interact with these people. I'm like, oh, you guys don't, You're like, what do you do? What is your life like? And so not only that, even within the hunting community, there's people that like disagree or can't relate with my mindset around it, or even hate me for it. You know what I mean? There's a strong dislike from some people. And frankly, I find those people the most interesting. I'm like, because I want to know why. Not that I care what they think about me, but I'm intrigued. Like I said earlier, like we're convicted, I think, by how we feel about it. I'm like, well, so what is your perspective? And I don't know. The more people like that we can expose ourselves to, I think the better, more rounded we can come. You and I talked just briefly last night about like the Matt Ranellas of the world, and Matt's been on this podcast. People that, and I don't know, we'd call Matt a friend or an acquaintance.
I mean, there's certain things that I agree with Matt on.
Yeah.
In fact, he put one up I don't know if it was yesterday or 2 days ago, of basically he sent an email to NWTF asking if they had a map, because their claim is they've opened 600,000 acres up to public access. And he's like, hey, do you have a map? And they're like, contact your state. And it's like, yeah, I'm skeptical of that claim. You know, like that's a lot of land that you opened up. Like, how or what factor were you in that opening of that land, right? And that's not to criticize NWTF, but more and more of those organizations are under fire for, like, we just talked about how much DU and NWTF are bringing in, and it's like, what are they doing with that money?
Yeah. Well, go ahead, Josh.
Do you guys feel a little bit like, I agree with you guys. Like, I think Matt has some good points. You think the way he's gone about it is like in this TMZ way, where it's like, maybe the NWTF just didn't want to deal with him because they know how he, like,
it's guaranteed.
You almost feel like he's going to manipulate this in a negative way no matter what.
You give him a soundbite.
Why do we even respond to it in a productive manner? You know?
You give him a soundbite and he's going to twist it every which way he wants it to turn out.
Yeah.
You know, and no offense to Matt, and there's a couple, I forget what the other guy is that's out there now, but like they're the anti-influencer, right? The only reason I know about them is because they're an influencer on social media. It's like, how are you an anti-influencer when the only reason, like the only way you're getting attention is by doing the exact thing that you say you hate to do?
Yeah. And, I mean, how many times has Matt Ranello been on the Meat Eater TV show? Or, I mean, you know, I know maybe at the time he didn't realize what was going on or what he perceived was going on or whatever the case may be. But,
sure,
yeah, I never talked to him, and don't get me wrong. Like, I think he's probably onto something a little bit in some manner.
I agree. Yeah.
But man, it just feels like
it's a rough. I was gonna say it requires a little bit of finesse filter there.
Yeah,
and it's not there. And no offense to Matt either, but like everything he's discussing has zero application to the whitetail world in the whitetail states. Like, he's so fixated on what's happening in like
that's
the
just
Western.
Where he's at.
I know, but he makes the broad stroke claims like it's everywhere, and I'm like, dude, I'm talking about 40 acres of private land, and you're talking about 40,000 acres of BLM land. Like, we're on different spectrums here.
Well, the problems are the same. You know what I mean? I think it's pretty apples to apples.
Minus the federal government side of things. Like, we don't have we have some Army Corps land stuff, but other than that, like the federal government from a land mass standpoint in the eastern U.S. is just,
the diagnosis of how to fix it doesn't necessarily, translate.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the impact he could have had if, like, he could have, like, maybe worked with Steve on some kind of another division, a Meat Eater that's kind of takes on these responsibilities. Like, it's like the amount of more productive work he could have done if he could have took that direction instead of this, like, harsh, like, I'm going to,
they're estranged. They don't even talk.
Estrange my brother. And go in that direction. Like, man, you had the biggest resource in the hunting industry at your fingertips to help with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you don't have to like everything that he's doing.
No.
Well, he got mad at the wrong thing. You know what I mean? That's where I sit with it. He got mad at people for promoting hunting, and it's possible that some people, if he wants to say that Meat Eater's doing it, promotes it so that they can make money solely, then I would say that, maybe that's not the best of intentions. But, he directs at a lot more people than that. He'll direct it at the hunting public, at, anybody who's creating hunting content and advocating for people to get into hunting. He just thinks that's wrong inherently.
Look how much we were just praising the NWTF about how well they've done with their memberships and raising money and stuff. And then, it's like, and golly, man, it's hard to be perfect all the time too.
Sure. Yeah. It's a weird thing because, like I said, there's several things that he brings up that I'm like, I agree. Like that for sure. I do. Yeah, the influencer and stuff. And again, I'm not saying that the industry hasn't had a hand in where we are today, like everything we just talked about, because it absolutely has. But I do think that there are some underlying pieces of it, or even just real specific segments of it that have been way more effective on where we are now than others. The YouTube influencer thing, maybe, but I mean, dude, the internet in general just lifted up a giant rock for us to be like, holy shit, that's how easy it is for me to go hunt Iowa or Kansas or Colorado or whatever.
It just is what it is. You're gonna have that needs to be the relationship between the industry and the states. You know what I mean? There's going to be a supply and demand
and there's a
fluctuation.
massive disconnect there. They don't even talk to each other.
Well, you know, I mean, I guess that's what some of those organizations are for. But yeah, I mean, we certainly don't see the firsthand.
The bigger piece of it is that the industry, when involved with the state, is usually from a lobbyist side above the DNR's head, and then it just rains shit down onto them that they have to deal with. And that's how it works. Is the lobbyist goes to the legislature makes the law, it rains shit down to the DNR, and they just basically have to use what they got.
Yeah. Do you think, guys, like, so it's like venison or deer meat, whatever, is illegal to sell, right? Wild game, at least. Obviously, there's like farm venison and stuff you can buy.
Yep.
But like, do you see that being the same as like I'm paying an outfitter for these animals, or I'm paying to lease these animals for hunting? Like, do you see that? Because I've seen some comments in some of my videos about like, you know, that is no different than buying a couple pounds of venison off of a redneck. Like, it's almost commercializing the animal.
Yeah, like a market hunting situation almost.
Yeah.
What is sorry, rephrase the question.
So basically, like, you know,
sorry, it's a poorly worded question.
No. So basically, you leasing ground is no different than people going out there and killing deer and selling the venison for a profit.
You're like creating a market for it.
Yep.
I'm not quite getting it.
So it's illegal to go out there and shoot deer and sell the meat.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it should be, frankly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
from a human safety standpoint, I don't think most people can be trusted to manage their meat.
Yeah, I get you. So in that same breath, like the market side of like basically occupying all this land and hoarding the resource to a point from a payment side, like that having a similar effect.
Like, is it okay to make money off of that kind of thing?
It's okay. Well, it's an interesting question because it's flirting the line between a public resource and private land owner rights.
Yeah.
It's the same with any of these technologies we talked about. With cell cameras, it's can you or can you not monitor your own personal property?
Yeah.
You know, monitor a public resource that's using your private thing. Same thing with corn piles. You know what I mean?
Can
I influence a public resource to its movement on my piece of private land?
You wouldn't lease
the piece that
you wouldn't lease a piece of property if it didn't have any deer on it.
Sure.
So the only reason you're paying the money is because the deer are on it.
Yeah. Yes, but like most of those things, I don't know how you can land in that. It's like, because I'm a strong believer of private landowner rights too. You know, I think people should have the right to monitor their own
I would
property.
say you're a strong believer of wildlife being a public resource.
Yeah.
That it's not your deer, it's not your turkey.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know,
it's like if we make it illegal to lease land for hunting purposes, does that fix a bunch of problems? Because then, like, your farmer Joe is not going to just let. No, like, I don't.
Well, and I'm also
interesting.
I'm also a capitalist, so like I purchase land to harvest timber or use the natural resources, and like if somebody wanted to lease my ground for crops, that's capitalist of me to be like, yeah, I want you to. I want to make money off that. So
it is interesting.
A resource though for the public, like,
right? Exactly. That's the line. There is like all of that stuff is contained within the ownership of the property I have. The wildlife on that I do not own.
Here's like throw this into the mix of that question is like Jeremy and I have flirted with the. I say it, the idea, like it's something we could enforce, but just like the concept of like, these public, USDA type programs. So like if I have 100 acres and I have it enrolled in CRP, should I then be required to allow public access, to hunting?
That's been a big discussion because you're receiving federal funds.
Part of me would advocate towards, yeah, you should, but now you're in competition with private market of people who are and I'll pay you more than the CRP contract to lease the thing.
Yeah, you're going to lose all of that habitat that's beneficial to the wildlife immediately.
Well, no. I'm just saying the state then is competing against hunters. and who's going to pay more for access?
Yeah, but you're also going to lose all of that out of CRP.
Well, yes.
Which is, the benefit is for waterways and wildlife and everything else.
Well,
and
right.
you do have that in some states where, you got WEHA land and stuff where
WEHA.
people pay you to essentially let the public on your land for hunting.
So, well, Josh, to go back briefly to your about using the resource, I think the other interesting side would be out west where you see private cattlemen allowed to graze on BLM land, which is basically owned by the people, right? It's public land, it's federally owned land. And so they're using a private resource to benefit off of a public resource. Do we see dollars for that leasing contract? No, we don't see anything from that. And I mean, that's where we can all say, well, yeah, it's federally owned land, but it's public, right? It's owned, whatever, all the guys run around with the public landowner t-shirts and stuff. Well, you're not getting any money from that lease agreement. You're not getting any money from the windmills or the solar or the minerals that they're extracting. You are and you aren't a public landowner, essentially.
It is interesting, Josh. And I think Jeremy and I are both, capitalists, like we said. We believe in that. And so I don't think you want to restrict it. Without having walked it all the way through, I think my gut response would be, I don't think you want to restrict it, but I do think you want to find ways to incentivize private landowners to maybe look at other options.
I'll tell you what I would be.
Or to increase, or do what we were saying earlier, increase the supply of quality deer so that demand wasn't so strong.
Yeah. But we restrict all kinds of things with deer, though. I mean, we restrict weapons and
regulations. You have to.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you what I would be in favor for is some sort of allocation of guide permits and outfitter permits to where there were only a specific number out there and they had a significant fee attached to them that could go back to funding the resource.
That exists in the West.
Doesn't exist anywhere in the whitetail space that
I know of either. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? And I'm that's not to, again, I'm a capitalist.
It's because it's public land, I think, is why that exists in the West.
Exactly.
So they have a specific number of permits to allow access to certain lands.
So to the point of what Josh was just saying, even on leases, is why do you pay an outfitter to go hunt? You don't pay an outfitter to just access land. You pay an outfitter to put you on a public resource to then harvest that public resource. To me, that should be permitted because it's not their resource. And I think that should be a substantial fee because a lot of these guys, I'm not saying they're making a ton of profit, but they're making a lot of money off of hunts for a resource that they don't own.
But they're paying for access to it.
But they don't. But again, you wouldn't pay for the access if the resource wasn't on it.
Yeah. You think Spook would pay $30,000 to go on a piece of land that didn't have a 200-inch deer on it?
He would not.
No.
No, he would not. Same thing. Yeah. So again, and I'm not trying to break their bank, but what if there were in the state of Indiana or Ohio, there were 50 outfitter permits and they cost you, I don't know, $50,000 a piece.
Okay.
That would make it, you have to be pretty legitimate first off, right? Or have money. And then from that side, they would be regulated, right? Because they're harvesting a public resource. I guarantee if you ask any of the states, hey, how many deer do your outfitters kill a year?
Yeah.
I don't know. Because the biggest problem we have, I don't have any problem with an outfitter. I do have.
What are you getting at? What are you trying to do? Achieve?
I'm trying to provide another revenue source for the natural resource. I'm trying to provide a more restricted method for outfitters because I think
restrict outfitters.
I think outfitters are one of the access issues as well.
Yeah, sure.
Because of the allowance of the technology and stuff, right?
Agreed.
So if you limited the amount of outfitters that could be in a place, you had more restriction on them. They're an operating business on a public resource. How they don't have restriction now is crazy. And it was a revenue source, right? If you had 50 of those for $50,000 a pop, that's a lot of money that could come back to helping the natural resources in that state.
Yeah.
In a more controlled method, and you probably would have more land available because there's not just every Joe Bubba saying, yeah, I leased 15,000 acres and I'm running my own outfit on.
Yeah. Almost like a tax on it or something.
I mean, I guess I'm just trying to circle back to what you said, Josh, is how can they be the only reason that people go to an outfitter is to harvest a public resource. They don't own it, but they can charge you for it.
it's a tough thing to tease apart because, like, dude, they're on it. Like, you know,
I know.
and they're paying for it. You know what I mean? They're paying for access to the private land. Like, yes.
They're paying a trespass fee, basically, is what they're paying.
Sure. You know,
but they wouldn't pay the trespass fee if the resource wasn't there.
Yeah. I get it. I mean, I'm with you. I would like to see, you know, money coming back to the state for that, or for it to be decreased, you know, so that the more individuals could access it. But you could say it's the same thing about any individual. You know what I mean? It's like anybody leasing any piece of property wouldn't do that without the public resource being.
I mean, would we be opposed to like a lease permit that you would have to buy through the state in order to lease a piece of property?
And what qualifications would you have to meet to do that?
Nothing.
You just had to pay for it.
Just an extra.
You're already
source.
paying for it. You're paying it to the landowner.
Yeah, but the landowner doesn't own that resource.
It would be the landowner having to pay.
They do, essentially. They own the land that it's on.
But they don't own the deer.
No, but while it's on their property, they have full access to it within the season dates and bag limits.
But that's the fine line of the public resource.
I'd rather see that money go to the individual than to the state.
I agree. I'm just from a resource level, there has to be the only people that are ever going to apply some sort of resource restriction is the state. So like that, as of right now, has to be the source of a lot of this restriction and or licensing or fees.
Yeah. I don't know. We're in uncharted waters there.
I know, but I think it's an interesting discussion, man.
I didn't come up. I'm not smart enough to come up with that question.
Neither are we.
It's a great
video, but that's interesting to think about. And I'm kind of with you guys. Like, dude, if it's your own land, I feel like you should, like the Texas model. You know, like
sure,
you can't be able to do whatever you need to do on it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if you're gonna open that can of worms, like it is an interesting discussion around, you know, the use of the public resource. And again, from a personal use side, I don't give a shit. Right. But from a commercial side, like I am profiting off of the public resource. That's where the line is at right now. And it's mainly because the simple question is, would you still pay for that access if the resource wasn't there? And the answer is no. Then there's value in the resource that has to have some sort of repercussion.
Yeah, but the resource may only be there because of actions taken by the landowner.
Very possible.
Maybe.
You know what I mean?
Very possible.
Like there's only big deer on a piece because I, you know, did all the switchgrass work or all this timber work. And, you know, so are you going to then, you know what I'm saying? It's a very hard thing to tease apart.
But if you're using it for personal use, I don't care.
Well, what if I only did that so that I could bring people on to pay me to hunt it?
You should pay a fee for that. It's a business.
Well, but then I'm not going to do the work to improve it. Like
Then you're not going to have the resource and you're not going to have a business.
I think the demand is there for it still.
Then you're going to get taxed somehow for it. Like that's what I'm saying. It's a circle there of like, because
I don't think you can pin it down. I just think
then you better change the entire way that we manage wildlife in this country because it can't be a public resource at that point. You cannot monetize a public resource.
It is. What do you mean?
That's what I'm saying. Nobody,
and I'm not just saying outfitters. I'm like it is monetized across the country.
When the North American model for wildlife conservation was set up, right? And the reason that market hunting was banned was because that was the commercialization of the public resource. We've evolved to figure out ways to get around that loophole.
Yeah, I agree.
By
leasing the land.
By leasing the land, by outfitting the land for the public resource. So because we've gotten around it, we're back in that same situation now. We've just skirted it for a while.
That was my point. Are we just you know, playing in some kind of market, you know?
Yeah, we reinvented the word. That's all we did. Outfitting is not that much different than market hunting. It's not. Prove me wrong.
Than market hunting.
You took a resource and you made money off of a public resource. You took it, you killed a deer and you made money off of a deer. How is that any different than outfitting right now?
Than outfitting. Oh, here, you keep swapping out the words on me. Though.
I know.
I'm trying to keep up with you.
That's a trick. Okay. So if market
this
hunting.
is what I want my channel to be about. Just getting people thinking about this.
That's what it should be. So if market hunting is banned, right? I can't go and kill a public resource. I can't go kill a deer and then profit off of that by selling the meat, et cetera, whatever. Okay. Can't do that. That's illegal.
Okay.
Okay. So how is that different than me charging you to come in to kill that deer?
Well, I think it's a public safety thing. Like the reason that venison can't be sold is because
No, it has nothing to do.
No, it has to do with that.
They were
It's
selling
because
antlers, they were selling hides, they were selling everything. That's market.
we
Is
almost
that
eradicated the deer in the late 1800s.
Yeah.
I mean, there was like only
Yeah.
300,000 deer in the North America back then.
I mean, that's how they eradicated the buffalo and bison herds, is they took all the hides.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yep, left the meat.
But it's not illegal to like sell antlers off of my deer, right?
Technically, I think it is.
Is it?
I think so.
I don't think it is.
You definitely, I know like Eric Chester and those guys sell them. Like
Well,
a bone, like,
You can definitely buy them. Like there's you can go like antlerstore.com or something. You can buy, you know what I mean?
Those might be farms.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe in the licensing process, like if
I
you've
got a bunch I might probably sell if anybody
Yeah.
wants.
Yeah.
maybe if you've tagged them, it is a big part of the why they have to be off skull caps and stuff, right?
It is
they're-
interesting.
I don't know that answer necessarily.
No, there's a market for shed antlers.
Oh,
I mean,
it's
those guys out
huge.
west sell them all the time.
It's huge. So
Yeah.
but anyways, you couldn't sell the hides.
The difference between
But
shed hunting
The,
now.
the resource isn't going away by selling those antlers. You know what I
No,
mean?
no,
Like
no.
those antlers are going to sit there and rot in the ground.
Yeah.
I'll bet there's a difference between shed antlers and
I guarantee
killing
there
deer to
is.
do it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's-
So that's
isn't that-
market hunting, right? So
Yeah.
what is the difference between that and profiting off of that versus you paying me to then go kill the deer?
Yeah, I don't know.
Not much difference. It's a fine line.
It's fun to think about.
I don't know.
And the scapegoat now is like, well, you're not paying to go kill the deer. You're paying for access to go hunt.
Mm-hmm.
But the ultimate, the reason you're doing it is to kill the deer.
Well, I guess it's at a different level. You know what I mean? It's like the paywall is being imposed in a leasing standpoint at the landowner level.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hey, you're making money by allowing somebody to hunt this resource on your land versus at the hunter level where it's like you are not allowed to profit off of selling the resource that you harvested. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess that would be the difference, the best I can explain.
Yeah. Now, here's the biggest part is market hunting, as Josh was saying, led to the demise of many wildlife populations in this country, right? And most people would say, well, outfitting won't it? Like, I mean, how many of us know an outfitter who has 1,000 acres that'll run 100 guys through that in a year?
Mm-hmm. Well, it definitely does it in pocketed situations. I mean, yeah, it's.
I guess the difference between what we're doing or that the outfitters doing and what happened back in the market hunting days is there wasn't hardly any regulations. Those guys still have to get tags and stuff to go on the resource, and so probably the state doesn't care as long as they're buying the tag off of them.
Yeah, I would assume that's probably the case. But again, and I'm not saying as much for the hunter who's with the outfitter as much as the outfitter is the one who's profiting off of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just feel like there probably should be some sort of license. And honestly, I bet the more legitimate outfitters, if they would listen to this, and besides the one who's there just telling me to fuck off right now, are probably the ones who are like, yes, we should do that because their business probably struggles when there's 7 other ones that are dog shit.
Yeah, I don't
Right?
disagree.
So I don't know. Again, and you know, I'm for capitalism. I'm for less government. So that obviously is a big factor here. That doesn't sound like I'm agreeing with less government.
But you also want to protect the resource. You know, I mean, I think
I
that's,
do.
Your heart's in the right place.
And I want to generate. I want to generate revenue to continue to help conserve the resource.
Yeah.
And if you're monetizing off of the public resource, I feel like you have to get taxed somehow.
There's definitely a bunch of states that have outfitter license you got to get.
Yeah, there are.
But I don't know exactly which states those are. And
And how
like I said,
regulated. Or again, just from a data perspective, because we've talked about this enough, like I would be interested in, you know, let's think of this, like I know Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Iowa, Missouri, all of those guys have a lot of outfitters. Like how many deer are your outfitters harvesting a year? And what does that look like? Is it $10 to every one doe? Well, shit, they're not helping the cause then. Like what if you made them harvest a certain amount of does a year? Like, this is the discussion that can at least start to happen. That
there's some accountability.
anywhere.
You're just saying, hey, if you're going to run a business where you're profiting off this,
That's all I'm saying.
there needs to be some. Yeah, fine.
Yes, that's all I'm saying.
Fine.
Yep.
How does that trickle down to the leasing thing? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
the individual.
Because I agree. Like, yeah, leasing is limiting access. There's no disagreement there. But is it justified? Because,
I think on a personal use side, you can't tax the personal use aspect of it. I don't think so. But the moment it becomes part of a commercial operation, as in terms of an outfitter, at that point, the hammer has to come down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How about that?
There's all kind of money back and forth there. For some reason, property taxes keep coming back into my mind too. I'm like, is there some way to like?
Well, and I don't want to penalize the landowner necessarily.
No. But hear me out. If CRP payments, USDA compensation is one level, the next would be, property taxes.
Yeah. Don't get me started on property taxes.
It's a scam. Yeah.
It's like a complete scam.
Yep. And so if there was some sort of like, whatever, break on those,
like a forgiveness. Like I know Ohio's got some of the timber plans that you can be in, CAUV. Yeah. CAUV plan that will dramatically lower. Yeah. Ours is clean and green here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and some form of that does allow public access.
Yeah, which is weird because it's not. There's some people that don't understand that.
Well, they're not. There's different variations of it, and so it's all interesting stuff. I mean, I don't know, man. It's just kind of.
Yeah,
I think these discussions are healthy, though.
It's super healthy.
It's fun to talk about this stuff. I just hope these conversations are happening at the state level, which I don't know if they are or not. But
I'll tell you that surprisingly, we get a lot of state people that are listening to this stuff in office. Like it'll just be playing in office, or there's a group of them that listen, and I'm glad they do. To the event that like. Even some of them will be like, hey, like we hear you guys pushing back on some of this stuff, and like, good. Like, I'm not saying that we're right, but like there should be at least discussion about why maybe it's not right or why maybe something should change.
Yeah. Somebody's got to ask the question. I mean, we've never claimed to be the authority on any of this, and like, our minds might change on a conversation to conversation basis, but I do think that they're healthy things to bring up into question, and hopefully somebody's got the answers.
Josh, before I let you go, so YouTube, obviously, are you putting that anywhere else right now, content wise?
I mean, my podcast goes up on any platform that you listen to podcast on.
So Spotify, Apple, the works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the YouTube is the main one. I don't put every video or anything I do on the Spotify or Apple Podcast. Social media, I do like a C- job on social media, putting stuff on there. I usually just tend to.
You never responded to my Instagram DM. I had to go through, I think, Rendell to get a hold of you.
Oh yeah. So that's pretty common. I don't have the crap on my phone.
That'll do it.
Relying on it. Facebook I have on my phone still, but all the like Instagram and all that. I got kicked off TikTok real fast.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah,
I think we're sitting with 2 strikes.
Yeah, they don't tend to like hunting content on there. So that's it though. It's all on Before the Echo. My Facebook page, just Josh Teulker.
Oh man,
yeah. If you guys go, mostly the one I care about, or one I would recommend is the YouTube channel.
Yeah, well, sweet man, you do a good job with it. Like I said, I appreciate just your honest take on stuff there, and I've been enjoying your stuff there.
It's right in line with our thought process of trying to invoke just good debate and discussion in the community. Yeah. Or thoughts even. And think.
It wasn't our intention. I hope we didn't put you in a weird spot with the crossbow thing here today. It was not our intention.
Oh no, I don't have any problem talking about anything. I mean, people that have a hard time with conversations usually are people that don't, know they're doing something wrong, or they're not open-minded about what's going on in the world. So it's fine.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. You've been a good sport today too. I know we probably talked over you a lot. We're passionate about these topics, and it's tough when we're remote too. There's a little bit of a delay, but we appreciate you tolerating and being a good sport today. So
I thought it was good.
Cool, man.
And awesome.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's cool.
I felt a spiraling on that one a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we just get into the zones on stuff, and I know that's kind of Josh's style too, just like having think discussions, but it's cool to get into those rabbit holes, because I guarantee, like, even in that little spiral at the end there, like, there'll be people listening, they'll be like, that's what we've been saying.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like the most flattering thing we get when people are like, we were just talking about this.
Well, and that's why I hope people will give us some grace, because it's not like we're having a written proposal here of like, things that, it's just ideas coming to mind and we're like, oh, that's interesting. Like, so in our minds, I think change on it every day. People propose new ideas and stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, somebody's got to have them, right?
Well, I'm always in a position of like, all of those things are opinionated, right? Like there's no necessarily facts behind them, but it's kind of like, okay, here's an idea, now tell me one that's better. Mm-hmm. And that's how we should operate. It's like, okay, here's an idea, tell me it's better, or tell me why that won't work, or what's wrong with it.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, and I'm not saying that we're always right, there is no factual response or reason why that shouldn't happen besides, well, I just don't want change, or like, you guys are elitist or whatever. It's like, the thought process here is nothing but we want the resource to be healthy and basically not unlimited, but be there for generations to come. And we want everybody to have a deer hunting experience that they interpret as being great, whether that's because they can kill big bucks, or they can just go kill deer, or they can hunt with their kids, or they can go on public land and see deer. Whatever it is, that's the end goal.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's a complicated, when we're like, okay, well, what does that look like? But I mean, undoubtedly, my perception would be, fewer and fewer people every year are like, hey, I had a great season this year. They keep getting better. Quite often you hear kind of the opposite, and then it's like, well, why? And that's a lot of what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think that with that needs to have, that's where the, people get pissy about it, but that's where the adult in the room has to stand up. Like if somebody said, well,
I agree, I
want to be able to hunt a 200-inch deer every year. No, that's not possible. An adult in the room would have to stand up and say, sorry, that's not possible. Like it will not physically exist. Or, hey, I want to run a hunting operation and I want to make $1 million a year by running people through and guiding them. Well, that's probably not healthy for the area and for your resource. Mm-hmm. There has to be somebody in the room that can stand up and keep things in check and manage the expectations. But the majority of people can have probably an experience that is good.
Well, I just don't think that there's many people like in that position of power that fully understand the dynamic that we talked about today. And if they did, they would be like, oh man, I didn't realize that okay. No. You dig into the dynamics of like between hunters and what's happening with, I can guarantee that's so minimally understood if at all, like what leasing has done to access, what that has done to, to drive demand for, quality deer.
Yeah.
It just
not even in the spectrum of thought process.
Yeah. And in the realm of, politics and like, the turmoil that our country is pulling itself out of, right now, it is a fairly minuscule thing. I'm not saying it's like it should be the first thing on the docket here, but, it should be addressed at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, case in point, although I'm in favor of smaller government, like there were 4,000 people that are in the like wildlife and habitat side of the government that just got fired. Mm. That seemed like an already short-staffed area. Like I'll be interested to see how that affects our natural resources on a federal level. I'll be interested. We talked about CRP payments and EQIP. I would assume that's all frozen. That's probably not happening. So that will affect a lot of people here in the near future.
Yeah, well, and that's, putting our money where our mouth is at. It's like our farm makes almost $20,000 a year off CRP payments. And at the same time, I'm leaning towards like advocating towards, but yeah, if you're taking money from the state, it almost seems like, the other public resources on your farm should be opened up. So, I think that's a harsh reality where, and you and I are going to be in where we bought that farm to deer hunt. So, I mean, we're going to,
I would cut the CRP off of it.
I'd say we'd cut that CRP off of it. And while I don't, we would do things to make up for the habitat, but like a lot of people wouldn't. So I'm not saying I'm advocating for less people to be in CRP, but if that's what has to happen, then, so be it.
Yeah. And I mean, the reality, and I think we've seen this, probably over the last 4 years, not to make it completely political but like we can't just keep giving. Can't just keep giving and giving and giving and giving. Like eventually it's like you end up in a situation where we're in debt and things aren't working and things are sliding down the hill. You have to get to a point where, okay, I will give you this great federal program, but we're hurting for access for people to hunt. So you're going to have to open it up. Well, I don't want to do that. Okay. Well, then you don't get my money. And you'll have to make the hard decision of what's, and then it's like, well, I can't afford the farm without this CRP. Okay.
Yeah.
Then sell it.
Yeah.
Like we can't make everyone happy.
Nope.
And I feel like we've been trying to do that as a country for too long. And it's like, yeah, it's created a mess, and so we got a long way to work our way out of it. But yeah, the hunting stuff it doesn't get near the attention of what it, we all want it to see. But the only way that we can make changes is having these discussions. I think the more of us that get on board and have these discussions and iron out to an end result, the better we'll be.
No doubt.
So anyways, we appreciate everyone listening to Josh and this podcast, and we will catch y'all next week.
Later.
Take me